On this episode of the Haunted Objects Podcast.
We're coming for you.
Oh my God.
We want you to train us. We know Project Stargate is still going on. We want in. I want in on Project Stargate or whatever the you're calling it.
Mutant powers.
Remote viewing is real.
It's real.
From deep inside the mysterious archives of the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal, it's the Haunted Objects Podcast.
Have you ever done anything or said anything, maybe wore something that people saw and maybe typecast you? Mm-hmm. Maybe it was something that frustrated you for a while, but eventually you embraced it?
I have the nickname Stana.
Why would you have that nickname?
And it's because I'm a very distracted eater, and I end up getting food on myself a lot. So I have the nickname Stana.
That's why you wear dark colors.
Sure. Apparently, you can distract me very easily while I eat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What about you, Connor? Is there anything that you've ever been like typecast in?
I accidentally became a fan of pineapple pizza.
Oh, God.
Now,
That's a good one.
because like at work, my boss one day was like, "Are you fine with can you have the pineapple pizza?" When there was like, it's pizza day or whatever. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then they somehow remembered that.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was constantly like, make sure you get a pineapple one for Connor. And so now everybody at the state capitol is like,
Pineapple guy.
knows me as pineapple guy. I'm not like, I was just like, sure.
You were just trying to be nice, and now you're pineapple guy.
Yeah.
Do you even like pineapple on pizza?
No, not that much. So
Do you just like now you have to eat it out of respect? Like you're like, all right,
like,
well.
oh, thank you, because they're being thoughtful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do you have one, Greg?
Yeah. I don't know. A fucking goblin guy.
Yeah. You definitely have goblin guy.
I mean,
worldwide.
I know. You know what's really funny about Hellier? I remember when we were trying to pitch Hellier to networks, we had a bunch of different meetings with the first season. And one of the things that they always wanted to do is they wanted to take the show and use the first season, cut it down, and use it as the pitch. And then they wanted every episode to be us in a different cave looking for a different regional goblin.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not doing that. I do more than that. I'm a paranormal investigator of everything. I do ghosts. I do Bigfoot. I do psychic phenomena, all this stuff. I don't want to just be the goblin guy. And there was like a beat of silence, and he went, I got news for you, buddy.
Listen, there could be worse things. You could be Stana or pineapple guy.
I think goblin guy is fairly derogatory.
It could be Tin Can Man.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
That'd be that.
I mean, also,
I didn't ask for it.
Tyler Strand is also
He's also helicopter man. So, I think that we all understand what it's like. You know, I've kind of embraced the Goblin King thing now. I don't really mind. That happens to everybody. I think that's something that everyone can kind of relate to.
Yeah.
So I understand what it must have been like for the subject of today's episode.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're talking about a guy who knows what it's like to be typecast because he's a fascinating individual who has a rich and detailed and very weird history that somehow, over the years, has been boiled down to a single utensil. That's right. Today we're talking about arguably the world's most famous psychic, a man who could bend spoons with his mind, Uri Geller. We got one of his bent spoons.
Do you believe in mind over matter? For nearly half a century, psychic Uri Geller has dazzled audiences by manipulating metal with nothing but the power of his mind. From television appearances to publicity stunts, Geller's powers have long mystified wide-eyed believers and enraged paranormal skeptics. But what if there's more to Uri Geller than bent spoons? What if Uri Geller was actually a psychic spy? According to recently declassified documents, Uri Geller may have been part of a clandestine psychic operation orchestrated by the Central Intelligence Agency. These documents suggest that Geller was trained by the CIA to utilize his psychic powers to gather intelligence, sabotage enemy equipment, and infiltrate enemy territory. What exactly was the extent of Uri Geller's involvement with the CIA? And what of his incredible abilities? Are they truly the result of supernatural powers? Or are they merely clever tricks? Perhaps it's time to remote view the truth.
I feel like the only people at this point, like people from our generation, we know who Uri Geller is. We've seen him in all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
He was a pop culture phenomenon for decades.
I feel like Uri Geller is like a staple of my childhood and my youth, kind of.
Yeah.
Because he was everywhere.
I mean, as a kid who was into weird stuff, I saw Uri in books all the time. He was always sitting there bending a spoon with his mind. He lent himself really well to celebrity.
First time I heard about him was on a TV show that he co-hosted with Chris Angel. You remember that?
I don't remember this
It's
at all.
called Phenomenon.
Oh, they were looking for
it was like
mentalist,
a
right?
mentalist reality show.
Yeah.
Which, in that respect, mentalism is just like doing mind reading magic tricks.
Right. Illusions.
And that's what they did. Illusions. And so that's what they did. And then they would eliminate somebody every week. And like him and Chris would meet and nailed it down to one guy, I guess.
It's a fun idea for a show.
It's a very, was it the early 2000s? Because it feels like a very early 2000s.
Yeah.
I think it
like
was.
Probably 2007.
If you're, in your 20s and you're listening to this episode, I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't know who Uri was.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're watching the video podcast, you'll see right here in front of his spoon, we've got a board game made by Matchbox with his face on it.
He was friends with John Lennon.
Yes.
Just like, think about that. He was friends with and interacted with in the celebrity sphere the most famous people of his time period.
Absolutely.
And there were multiple time periods in which he was a very popular man. So he was the shit.
Yeah. And he was kind of the face of the New Age movement for a long time.
Sure, yeah.
If you know about spoon bending and the idea of psychokinesis and using your mind power to warp metal, that is from Uri Geller.
Would that be your power? Would you enjoy that power? Would you use it for good or evil?
I mean,
would you like pick up things with your brain?
Does good and evil apply to you when you're a god?
That's true. Spoken like a true villain. Spoken like someone who's choosing the villain's path.
I don't know. I mean, I can think of other. Uri claims to have other powers that I would much rather have.
Yeah, I was going to also say the worst thing on the planet would be giving a Scorpio that power.
Well, that's true. That's making a supervillain.
Yeah. How do I learn how to mentally manipulate metal and all sorts of fun things?
Or read people's minds. Have you ever tried to read someone's mind?
I mean, I don't know if I've tried to, like, I think see into people's minds, I guess, to see like where they're at, but I don't think it's ever really worked.
Yeah. Uri claims he can. He claims that when he was a child in school, he used to be able to cheat on tests because he could stare at the back of a student's head that was in front of him. And by sitting there and staring at it, he could pluck the answers to tests out of his mind.
Yeah, didn't he have a teacher kind of like pull him in after school, and because the answer to a math problem was correct, but the math itself,
the actual
he couldn't
work,
do the actual work. So the teacher was like, "Wait a second here."
There is a story that he told once about doing that exact same thing. The teacher pulls him aside and he can't explain it. So he used his mind power to speed the clock up to lunch so that he could escape. Him and his friends could escape and they didn't have to answer any uncomfortable questions.
I love that in this also version of events, the teacher was like, "Oh, it's lunch. You must go ahead and leave." Like there was no sense of like
authority,
spatial time awareness, like whatsoever.
45 minutes goes by.
Yeah.
In,
no
like,
idea.
The blink of an eye.
Oh.
Oh, well, look at that. It's lunch. You better get out of here, you little cheater.
He apparently also used to use his powers as a child to help his mother win card games. He could know, what other people had in their hands and things like that. So he was really apt. He basically should have gone to Professor X's School for Gifted Youth.
He could have been in the chair.
Uri Geller is canonically part of the Marvel comic universe.
I did see that. That's actually pretty cool.
There is a Daredevil issue that guest stars Uri Geller.
And how much does that speak to his level of celebrity?
Exactly.
Like, he was enormously famous.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
You know who the best man at his wedding was?
I do know.
Michael Jackson.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, good for him, I guess. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't want to talk about it.
Maybe we don't talk about that one.
Yeah.
As a child, Uri really wanted to be a spy.
Yes. Who didn't?
I mean, everybody kind of wanted to be, right?
I had a club with my cousin Wes and Jen and my sister Corey, and it was called the Spy Club. And we were convinced that the lady who lived across the street from us was, we were really obviously influenced by the X-Files. So we thought that she was like a government, like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know what we thought, but we ran like 24-hour surveillance on her.
Yes.
When we were all like 10 years old.
Dude, is this a kid thing? Because I remember my friends and we used to stake out the mayor of our town
No.
because we thought that he
Yeah.
was in a cult.
Spying on people is fun. It is.
You do love to look through people's drawers.
I will root through your drawers, and I will drink a coffee looking very disheveled, hidden in the darkness outside of your
Yeah.
house, inside of an old car. That's literally the best thing ever.
It is pretty great.
It's so
Stakeouts
fun.
are pretty fun.
Yeah, go on a stakeout. Shout
Yeah.
out stakeouts. Stake out anyone.
Have you ever been on a stakeout, Connor?
No, I don't.
Connor, let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's do
Connor had a
stakeout.
well-adjusted childhood. He was actually like playing games
Yeah.
and having friends.
Well,
and-
we'll have to change that. Let's
Yeah.
find someone that we can stalk and stake them out.
Okay.
All right,
do
let's
it.
do it.
I used to follow cars sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
In high school and when you could drive.
Just for fun?
Just to see where they were going.
Yeah, it'd be like because it'd be like, oh my gosh, what's this person doing out at 2 a.m? You know, and you're
Yeah.
like 17, and
Yeah.
you're
And
just
they're
driving
like-
around with a couple friends, and they're like, what are they doing out at 3 a.m? And so you just kind of follow them for a little while. But I never stood outside their house, and once they went into a neighborhood, I would leave.
I just wanted to like feel like a old disheveled detective.
Grizzled detective.
Like just chain smoking,
Private
drinking a
dick.
coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just miserable. Like I've been up for 12 hours. Like that's what I wanted to be.
Well, that's what Uri wanted to be too.
Yeah.
Uri wanted to be a spy. Uri was born in Israel,
Mm-hmm.
and Uri served in the military, 18 years old. He was wounded in action, and then he started working as a model.
Yeah.
So he was always pretty charismatic. He was a handsome guy.
Yeah, he was really dreamy. He
Yeah.
had like, a great head of hair. Just sort
He
of
did.
like he was kind of a dreamy guy back then. He's still kind of dreamy.
He's,
to be honest
he's
with
still a
you.
good-looking guy.
Yeah.
He eventually ended up working in clubs as an entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
This is where some of his history gets a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
Because it seems pretty obvious, reading his biography, watching some of his interviews, that he was probably a magician.
Sure.
But it's something that he's never officially copped to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the average person looking at his career at that point in time, if you didn't know any better, I think you would just assume he was a magician.
Yes.
Like it would be very easy to clump him into the category with the rest of the performing magicians.
Well, what he would do in his act is he would do a lot of what we would probably see as mentalism.
Sure.
So it was guessing people's cards. It was like having people write something and then he could, recreate it on a big whiteboard.
Kind of like what Darren Brown does.
Yes, exactly. That kind of thing. So he was an entertainer. He was really good at it. He was very charismatic. People liked watching him. People liked watching him so much that he eventually became friends with Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the prime minister of Israel. So like really big people
Yeah.
were very fond of him.
Yeah. He
And-
had influence. He had that charisma. He had the ability to charm people. And his collection of friends were very powerful. They
Yeah.
were very famous. They were very rich people.
And that only grew as his legend did. According to Uri, his specific powers,
Yes.
we know him because of the spoon bending,
Yes.
but his specific powers include psychokinesis,
Yeah.
which again, spoon bending, dowsing. So if you're not familiar with dowsing, it's the ability to find typically water underground. You can use dowsing to find things that you've lost. But the weirdest thing he's ever claimed to be able to do is make seeds sprout. And I had never heard this
I'd never
until
heard it
we were
either.
doing research on this podcast.
So he's making like actual seeds pop and sprout.
He claims.
That's what he claimed in more recent videos, more recent interviews. So maybe that's a newly developed skill.
He's not a healer.
No.
He doesn't commune with the dead. At least
No.
it's not something that he's usually doing.
Yeah.
And he
don't-
doesn't even like to give people like medical advice
No.
or anything like that.
I don't think, as far as I know, I don't think he's ever even attempted to like go into those spaces, but I
No.
could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure he hasn't. He's really stuck to the space that he's always kind of been familiar
If
with.
he's like an entertainer,
Yeah.
he really comes across as an entertainer who, a lot of people believe and a lot of people don't. So speaking of some people believing him and some people not, it's his biography, his autobiography, My Story,
Yeah.
where he does admit that in the early days of his entertaining, his manager convinced him to start doing magic tricks on stage.
Okay.
So while he claims he's not a magician and he's never has been a magician, he did say in his autobiography that he did perform some magic tricks. I think the one that he admitted to in his autobiography was guessing people's license plate numbers.
Oh,
Is
that's
that it?
right. Yeah.
And the way that it worked was his manager was the one going out in the parking lot and looking at these people's
Yeah.
license plates.
Pretty easy.
Yeah,
Pretty
for sure.
easy
I mean,
one.
it's standard mentalism stuff. It's way easier than you would think.
Yeah, and this is pretty early on in his career too. So it makes sense that a young person might have, other people giving advice and influence and after a period of time going like, all right, maybe I'll try some of this magic stuff.
And I can understand, he claims that the reason that he started to do these magic tricks is because, he only has a few different powers and he was seeing, dwindling attendance
Yeah.
at a lot of the same clubs that he was doing.
Yeah.
And so he needed to keep it fresh. In fact, there's a quote here: "A magician could write new acts, get new magic, do new tricks. I couldn't because I wasn't a magician. I was amazed when I started seeing the auditoriums emptying on me. Managers could no longer put me up in big theaters, so I started being booked in discotheques and nightclubs, underground, smoky places with dancing, striptease and clowns, jugglers and acrobats. I was suddenly just another act." So that was a big part of why he tried to freshen his performances up and add, at least one illusion that he's admitted to. Things took a positive turn for Uri's career in 1971 when he met a pretty famous eccentric parapsychologist by the name of Andrea Puharich. Andrea took Uri to the United States.
Yes.
He was so overwhelmed with Uri's abilities that he brought him to the United States, and they started doing all kinds of parapsychological tests on him.
Yeah.
They were introducing him to all kinds of different people, other scientists, journalists, late night hosts, and his career just popped off.
You could tell that Uri Geller was a performer. You can tell that he is someone who likes attention. But I also think that he, very early on came across pretty authentic.
Yeah,
like
I think
pretty much like, kind of like you said, soft spoken, very believable. Someone that it wouldn't be hard to believe that this person has abilities.
Yeah. By the 80s, he was described quite often as a millionaire multiple times over.
Sure.
So within a decade, he had absolutely gone from this guy doing like seedy nightclubs
Yeah.
To being on every late night show and being a millionaire.
Yeah, being like literally rubbing shoulders with presidents and like iconic celebrities.
Which is kind of a suspicious thing, right? Because it's
Yes.
how do you suddenly recognize, like, wait a second, this guy is not the main performer at Caesar's Palace.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, maybe he could be, but he's not.
Right.
He's
So where is this coming from?
He's no David Copperfield.
Well, it's true, though. I mean, even Uri himself is like, I'm not a magician.
Mm-hmm.
He really does. I think, one of the derogatory things that James Randi used to say is that he only had 4 tricks. He could only do 4 tricks. And honestly, like, he never really went outside of the powers that he claimed to have.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a whole lot of evolution there. So how in the world did he become a multimillionaire in 10 years just from bending spoons, allegedly?
The interesting thing about Uri Geller is, as we talked about, he claimed dowsing skills, dowsing abilities. And it wasn't uncommon at that point in time to hear stories of him being hired by huge companies to either seek out oil or other mineral, diamonds, for instance, and be kind of a psychic spy for these larger corporations.
There was a guy who was interviewed in an old British documentary about Uri, and his name was David Sterling, and this guy worked for a mineral rights company. And in '95, his company actually hired Uri to get into an airplane with them. They were flying over the Solomon Islands, and he would sit there with a map and his hand over the map, and when he felt a pull, he would say, "There's diamonds down there."
Yeah, he described it as like a magnetic pull. So the feeling of like his hand feeling completely drawn down to the map.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, that's where the diamonds are." The other thing is they talked about how not only was he good at finding places, but he was also capable of telling them, maybe don't drill there.
Right.
There's probably nothing there. So he was saving these companies, millions and millions of dollars potentially if there was no oil there, by letting them know not to waste their time.
David Sterling said that their agreement with Uri was that they would pay him almost $250,000 just to take the flight with them. It was a 3-hour flight. And then when they found minerals, he would get a percentage of everything that they made off of them. And that's one guy on record.
Yeah.
And there's rumors that he was being paid $1 million a pop to do these for oil companies too.
There and back again.
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously, he was a very good businessman.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, he wasn't just a performer. He wasn't just a psychic. He was a businessman. He was making money utilizing his powers and doing pretty good at it, I'd say.
And, he was a celebrity too. So he was getting paid to make appearances in different places. In 2002, he was in a show called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He was the first person eliminated on that show.
Well, that's what the show demanded. There was another one that I watched called Celebrity Cash in the Attic.
I've never even heard of the show.
It's like a British version of Cribs combined with like Pawn Stars, like an auction show.
Oh, weird. So someone looks around their house?
So they look around their house and then they pick some items and then they put the items up for auction.
Oh, that's
and so you
cool.
like see their house.
Weird.
And then the celebrities like sitting there while people bid on the, or he put up like some vases and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And things from his house. And so it's the big draw from that video. You see some of his personality, but you also see his car.
Oh, the
baby.
Spoonmobile, baby.
Love it.
I feel like this car is an absolute death trap. Could you imagine if this car got into an accident and it was just nothing but flying like utensils all bent?
Look at this car.
He's so proud of it.
He
too.
is too. It's like an old Blues Brothers car with just a ton of silverware, bent silverware glued to it.
What is that on the very front? Like, what does he have in place of the... What is it?
Like a crystal ball?
That's a crystal ball.
Maybe, yeah.
On the front of that car.
Could you imagine
That's
that thing
awesome.
just flying off that car like 100 miles an hour?
Oh my God.
Like a cannonball flying through the air.
Today, a young man was decapitated by a crystal ball flown from the hood
Of Uri Geller's.
international psychic Uri Geller's car.
Does he drive it around or is it like...
Probably not.
Yeah.
Maybe
okay.
special occasions.
All right, fair
Local
enough.
parades.
It's like his Pope mobile.
the Geller mobile.
Yeah.
He does those. The thing is he can't have been doing performances during the bending of all of those spoons.
No.
So was he just in his garage?
Just like...
Just standing there by himself?
No, he's got his wife and kids.
Yeah.
It's like
An
an assembly line.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, when you think about it, how many spoons do you think this guy has bent throughout his career?
Millions.
Do you think he carries them around in his pocket?
That
That motherfucker has spoons in his pocket all the time.
probably.
The
Everywhere.
only people that have spoons are probably like ice cream super fans.
Or the
Uri-
tasters.
Yeah, Uri Geller and those guys that play the hillbilly music.
Spoon. Yeah,
Just playing the spoons on their knee.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Spoon musicians.
Uri made a wonderful career out of his alleged powers.
Yes.
He was really well liked by most people.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the world did these powers come from?
God. Jesus Christ.
Close. His story has changed a few times, but
It
one of
has.
my favorites is that he got them from aliens.
I love this so much.
Uri has claimed that when he was young, he saw a glowing orb, basically a UFO, and it was very real. It was very physical. He claims he could have reached out and touched this thing. And then after seeing this bright white light, this orb, he suddenly realized he had powers. That's one of the stories.
Okay.
There's a few others. There's one that he says he remembers being 1 year old, and a bullet went through the room above his crib, and glass from the window fell everywhere, but it didn't hit him. And the shock triggered his powers awakening, his mutant powers awakened in that moment.
Yeah, but didn't he like use his powers to like stop the glass from falling on him? Wasn't he like?
Maybe that's why they didn't hit him. The bullet thing happened when he was 1.
Yeah.
At 5 years old, he said that he saw a giant sphere of traveling light in his backyard, and it hit him in the forehead, knocked him down, and he ran home. This he claims is corroborated by a neighbor. So a neighbor saw this sphere of light too, and then after that, his powers manifested. But he also claimed at 5 that he was eating soup. Just randomly eating soup.
Oh, yes.
And then the spoon just kind of bent in his hand and broke.
The very first spoon.
In the 70s, after he met Andrea Puharich, Andrea hypnotized him.
Yes.
And so Andrea hypnotized him, and Geller identified himself under hypnosis as Spectra, a computer aboard a spacecraft from a distant galaxy. And under the control of Huva, another alien, he was sent to intervene on Earth, and Puharich was sent to assist Geller.
That's awesome.
So that was part of the reason Puharich was so into Uri.
Because Puharich was part of the origin story.
Yes.
I love that so much.
He was so taken with Uri at that time that he almost like referred to him in messianic terms, like as if this guy had been sent here for a purpose, and he was there to assist him.
Awesome.
So Spectra. Of course, that's one that
Spectra's such a cool name,
is very
too.
cool. But Uri doesn't claim that one.
Okay.
He's like, no. That's not who I am.
Okay, gotcha.
Uri might be a robotic alien intelligence sent here to, I don't know, lead us on a new path of human existence.
Do it! Let's go! I'm coming! Let's get her!
It's not the weirdest thing we've heard.
No, it's not.
That's
for
pretty
sure.
par of the course, to be honest with you.
I mean, that's kind of, it's interesting because it's almost like you can see him workshopping things.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what he did, but it feels like he's workshopping the perfect story about where this stuff came from.
Yeah, and like remember the thing about it too is at this point Uri's got to be anyway. I'm gonna make an assumption, but watching the popularity of things come and go, you probably as a performer and an entertainer get an awareness of like, oh, maybe I should. Be, interested in this kind of thing now. Yeah. Do you want him to be an alien? He'll be an alien.
Yeah.
Do you want him to have, balls of light blast into his kid head? There's that too.
You want him to just be a weird kid?
I want Uri Geller to be all of those things at the same time.
Maybe he is.
He is.
But the one thing that Uri wants us all to know is the one thing he was not was a magician.
Yes.
And that's the most important thing.
Who wants to identify as a magician?
I mean, listen.
For some reason, I feel like magicians do have a psychic ability, and it's to tell that I'm the person in the room that
wants to be picked on stage the least.
The least. And I know it's because I'm like, anytime they're like, and a whore's going to come on the stage, and I'm like,
how about this young lady here?
Like I'll crumple my body up into a small little square and then hide underneath a chair. They always know. So I'm actually terrified of magicians because they wield the ability to publicly embarrass me, and I don't like that.
They wield the ability to publicly embarrass themselves too.
Well,
every night.
Some of them do.
4 or 5 days a week.
Some of them do.
With that in mind, let's take a look at Uri's most popular power. the ability to bend metal,
Yeah.
particularly spoons, with his mind. Now, according to Uri, it's all done mentally. He just
Yes.
commands the spoon to bend.
Yeah.
He's not physically doing anything other than lightly rubbing it and touching it.
See, and I didn't realize that because there's like a, when you've seen it, and most of us have probably seen Uri Geller bending spoons, I always assumed that like he was using his like fingers to not bend it, but that the fingers were like creating some sort of like energetic impulse that would create a rift in the metal and make it break. I didn't realize that like that's just sort of like how he focuses his mind.
Well, one of the things that Uri has always claimed is that his powers work better if he can touch the thing that his mind
Yeah.
is manipulating.
Which I guess I understand. Totally makes sense to me.
He has to touch them. The tactile feel of the thing somehow helps his mind
Okay.
bend this stuff.
Got it.
And he just commands it. In his head, he says, bend, bend, bend.
Yeah.
And if you watch any of these big performances that he's done where he has people in the crowd attempting to do it too,
Mm-hmm.
they're all yelling, bend, bend, bend.
Well, the thing is, so a spoon is it's a visual object. It's just an everyday object. That's really good in terms of performance, right? It's an everyday object. It's not something super weird that you're introducing people to. And it's visual. It's very visual. You can see it. You're not used to that happening. You don't understand what's going on. It's also arguably a pretty small motion for a pretty big effect.
Yeah.
And this kind of reminded me of something that I kind of coined back at the Stanley, where we had a couple of really big doors that would sometimes shut on their own. And they weren't like the heaviest doors. And so in theory, if it was a ghost closing the door, it was a small motion that caused a big, highly noticeable event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's low amount of effort, big amount of notice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I called the splash effect.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like a big splash
Yeah.
from just a little tiny rock that's thrown.
It's a great way of putting it. Really good way of putting it.
Splash effect. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, it worked really well for Uri
Mhm.
because people were astounded by this. And before too long, there were people all over the world who were holding spoon bending parties.
Which is so fun. I
It's
love
so
that.
fun.
Yeah.
We should have a spoon bending party.
Like dinner parties where you just have your friends over and everyone tries to bend spoons.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
Some of the most famous spoon bending parties, PK parties, whatever you want to call them, were hosted by a guy by the name of Jack Hoke. And he was a Boeing engineer. He worked in aeronautical and astronautical stuff. And he started doing his own research on PK and spoon bending after reading some of the research on Uri. And there's a really, really great passage in Uri's biography. It said right here, he invited 21 people for a Monday evening event at his house. About half were proven remote viewers. We're going to get into remote viewing in a minute. Half of them were proven remote viewers, and half were just friends from his tennis club, but they were all asked to take part in one of these PK experiments.
Can you imagine the tennis club people being like, what in the
I know.
fuck is going on
I
here?
think everybody listening to this podcast can make that comparison.
Yes.
Where they're like, they were half from this part of my life.
Yeah.
And half are people who listen to this podcast.
Uh-huh. Also, what kind of a lunatic throws a Monday evening dinner party? Like, who's doing that?
True.
When you said Monday evening, I was like, oh, I would have not gone. Like, are you nuts? What?
That is a weird time to have a party.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It was a time period where no one had the internet, so it was like, that's how,
Oh,
you
that's
know what I mean?
true.
People were like, have
Yeah.
a dinner party every night. Not me.
Well, all of Jack's guests were given either a fork or a spoon.
Yes.
And they were told that they're going to learn to bend them like Uri Geller. And they're just going to relax. They're just going to have fun. They were to, quote, get a point of concentration in their head, make it very intense and focused, and then grab it and bring it down through your neck, that point of focus, grab it through your neck, bring it down your arm, through your hand, and then put it into the silverware at the exact point where you intend to have it bend. And then you command it to bend, release the command, and let it happen.
It's funny because now, in retrospect, there is a lot more actionable intention going on into the act of bending spoons,
Right.
as opposed to like what I thought, which was just people looking at spoons and going, you know what I mean?
Nope.
Like, there's actually like, you know,
Visualization.
yeah, just, I mean, raising energy,
Mhm.
releasing energy, programming it, directing it. These are all magical techniques.
Absolutely,
like,
they
literally,
are.
they're doing magic.
It's magic.
Yeah.
The first person to experience something was a 14-year-old boy in full view of all the guests. He had the head of his fork just go and flop down by
Awesome.
itself.
That must have been the greatest moment of that kid's life. He was like, I did it.
What Jack said was this was the turning point for the party, because this was the point where like everyone had a sudden like a realization,
Yeah.
an awakening that, oh shit, this can actually happen.
Yeah.
And after that, 19 of the 21 guests experienced their silverware twisting, breaking, falling apart.
That's so cool.
There's even a picture of it in this book.
Oh yeah,
And
look
it's
at
like
that.
some of the cutlery that was bent at his parties.
Look at that one spoon too. Like the spoons that are bent in half, like the actual spoon part. That would be so hard to do with
That's
just your
wild.
hands. Like even just your hands, trying to do that alone would be incredibly hard.
After this, I mean, all bets are off.
Yeah.
They know it's real. They know that they can do it.
They've had the paradigm shift.
They've had the paradigm shift. Jack said that he developed a theory after this that he called peak emotional events, and that these peak emotional events could transcend the boundaries of the known dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
So peak emotional events, or P. P.E.E. Keelan made sure to put in the notes that I feel like he could have come up with a better acronym.
Maybe a little bit.
Oh, you get excited?
P.
Yeah, and you pee. You get excited and you pee. You have a
Yeah.
peak emotional event.
Mm-hmm.
That, for most people who witness it, is enough to make them believe in the power of someone like Uri Geller.
Sure.
Because that's one of the fun things about Uri is he claims anyone can do this.
Yeah.
He's just really talented at it, but that he claims anyone can learn how to do this.
Yeah. Uri's had more practice than everyone else.
Exactly.
The thing is like so the belief system change that Jack talks about at his parties is kind of the same effect that Uri's been saying for years and years as he
Yeah.
performs in these theaters.
Yeah.
If it's not a friendly environment, he doesn't do a great job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which
And
I get.
We'll talk about that later, but and there was some point in some of the books we read that really drove it home, where it's like, hey, artists perform better in front of crowds that are friendly. Basketball teams perform better in front of the hometown crowd.
Oh, think of comedians.
Yeah.
A comedian with a bad crowd, they can do the same exact set that they've been
Yeah.
doing all over the country, and the comedian will look bad. They'll
Yeah.
choke.
Yeah.
It'll look like a terrible show.
Yeah.
A good crowd makes it.
There's an exchange of energy that's going on, which is the performer goes, I'm going to perform for you, but in order to do that, you have to like respond and give me kind of, give me that same kind of energy back, and we'll all have a good time together.
I know when we're doing interviews, whether it's a television show or it's Hellier or whatever, whoever is actually doing the interview, they're always better if the person is giving you big emotional
Yeah.
responses with their face.
It's difficult to read it otherwise.
If somebody's just sitting there and they're just like staring at you,
Yeah.
You don't know how you're doing,
Yeah.
and you give what feels like a bad interview.
Yeah, you second guess yourself. You get in your own head. It's easier. Again, it's that kind of give and take thing where it's the audience or the viewer is giving you back what you're giving to them. Thank you, Connor.
The vibe is important.
Yeah.
That is what it's like to see Uri Geller as maybe someone who believes that he has powers. Maybe you've experienced that yourself. But there is a group of people who are very upset by Uri Geller bending spoons.
Yeah.
It really, really bothers them.
Yeah.
And these are magicians.
Yes.
Magicians do not like Uri Geller
Yeah.
because they believe that he's just performing magic tricks
Yeah.
and not copping to it.
Yeah.
The same kind of thing that we saw when we dive into spiritualism. The early spiritualist movement was the same thing. there were a group of magicians who were skilled at performing the same illusions that were happening at these Victorian seances. But because the people who were spiritualists weren't copying to the magic tricks, they got very, very mad, and magicians went after them to debunk them.
It's as if for magicians, there's like a handshake that happens, and most magicians will say on stage, like, none of this is real. Again, this is magic. They'll be constantly reminding the audience of that. And it's kind of a handshake where it's like, we're going to do some wild things and I'm going to show you some amazing things, but it's important to remember that none of it's real. It has to kind of chap your ass a little bit when you're that kind of person and you see other people doing the same things and utilizing the audience's desire to believe that this something supernatural is happening. It's got to chap your ass a bit. I see it from both sides. I really do. Like, and I understand why it would feel frustrating and incredibly, I don't know, it would just feel very awful, I think, from the magician standpoint. I get it.
Only we had a magician that we could talk to about these types of illusions.
I'll be right back.
You know, I get suspicious every time Connor leaves the room now.
I feel like he leaves the room so much we should have a door for him back there.
Maybe we should cut a door in that wall.
Can we cut a door in the wall?
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal Membership Program. Become a museum member and take part in live paranormal investigations. Receive Dana's Magic of the Month subscription box, access in-depth artifact case files, and gain access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content available only to members. To become a member, visit patreon.com/paramuseum.
What do you think he's doing out there?
He's pooping. He's taking a poop. He can't stop us from saying that he's pooping, so he's probably just pooping.
You're right. He's probably taking a big, sloppy mud pie.
Big mud pie. In the bottom.
Somebody asked for a magician?
How in the world did he do that?
Oh my God. He just appeared.
But you left that way, and now you're there.
Conjured. All right. I heard you had a question.
You know, I am so glad that the Conjurer is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we need to ask you a serious question. As a magician, how do you bend a spoon?
Ah. A great inquiry for a great profession. First thing you need is a spoon. And the second thing you need is a very powerful mind. Let me demonstrate.
No! Get out of here!
He's bending.
How are you doing that?
How is he actually doing that?
Whoa!
Oh my God, Connor!
Wow!
The great Condini, the Conjurer, just bent a spoon with his mind.
That was awesome. Bravo! Bravo! Bravo!
Just learned it.
The Conjurer. Wonderful to have a repeat performance.
Back.
I noticed that your outfit has had a bit of an upgrade.
Well,
It's almost
I am magic. Put that card down.
this trick went a lot better than the last one.
I love that Connor is a jock magician.
He's on a mission to prove himself after that performance.
After the card. You know the card for our viewers who have seen this episode, I do keep the card on my desk all the time.
It's always there.
Right here as a reminder.
We need to talk a little bit about magicians.
Yes.
There was one particular magician that absolutely hated Uri Geller.
Yeah. He hated everything, let's be honest.
That's true. But it's like this guy decided he needed a lifelong nemesis.
Yeah.
And Uri Geller was it.
Yeah.
Who are we talking about, Connor?
You're talking about Brother James Randi.
God rest his soul. Well, he didn't believe in God.
The great spaghetti demon rest his soul.
Yes. He's in hell right now.
Yes. The flames of hell are licking his toes. And demons are tormenting him.
So James Randi is, I think, arguably the most famous skeptic of all time.
Yes.
Professional grumpy man.
Professional
Yes.
curmudgeon.
It's true. He absolutely hated Uri Geller.
Fun
Yes.
sponge.
James Randi was previously known as the Amazing Randi.
Yeah.
And he was a stage magician. And when he saw what Uri was performing, he got mad because Uri wasn't saying, I'm a magician.
Yeah.
In fact, he was explicitly saying, I'm not a magician. And he took it upon himself to try and take this guy out.
Yeah.
That really changed his entire career. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what caused James Randi to start
That's crazy if that's true.
the was it CSI Center
Yeah,
for
the Center for Skeptical Inquiry.
Wow.
I believe that may have been what spurred it on.
I think so.
Really being an effort to just sort of disprove woo-woo stuff, as
Yeah.
he would sort of categorize it. And Geller was the most popular thing at the time. So
Yeah.
target to go after. He's a magician. He gets it. Honestly, it's the same kind of lifelong quest that Houdini had.
Right.
Yeah.
Just kind of did it in a modern day, more
How-
serious way.
How original.
He hated Uri
Yeah.
so much that he referred to him as the devil.
Yeah, didn't he wasn't he at a fancy celebrity party once, and Uri was like, "Let's be friends," and Randy was like, "You man," he literally.
No, he refused to shake his hand.
Yeah.
He wasn't always nice about it.
No, he was never nice about it.
Yeah. So
He
he used a
was
lot
never-
of strong words,
Yeah.
fraud, con man, things like that.
Yeah.
Yuri did not like that at all. He took great offense to it. And so there were some lawsuits, which were all thrown out. You know,
Yeah.
I know the most famous one, he sued Randy for $15 million.
It was a lot of bucks.
And
He had to pay the legal fees.
yeah, the
I
case
believe.
got thrown out, so he had to pay Randy $120,000 in legal fees.
Yeah. Yeah.
And James Randi, he did, I want to give credit where credit's due. He
Sure.
did a lot of good work in exposing the general public
Yes.
to the idea of skepticism.
Yes.
And showing people maybe why they should be skeptical of people who claim that they're performing miracles. His big deal was he hated psychic surgery.
Yeah.
So he went after psychic surgeons. I think that's bullshit too.
Yeah.
I mean, functionally, ideologically, I don't have a problem
Yeah.
with James Randi.
I agree.
I just kind of had a problem with how he went about it.
Sure. He's just an insufferable person.
Sure.
Just in general. That's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, I know that this is going to ruffle some feathers, but I think he was a little bit jealous of Uri Geller.
I mean, here's the thing. Let's put ourselves in James Randi's position. You're someone who has dedicated your life to magic as a magician, and here comes someone else who's doing similar things, only the difference is they're not telling people that what they're doing isn't real. I understand that could be a motivator to be incredibly frustrated and to also immediately pivot and become the kind of person who starts to want to take those people down.
Yeah.
I understand that impulse.
Sure.
I think
I do too.
everybody understands
Yes.
that impulse.
I mean, I think I even fall victim to it sometimes
Sure.
when I see, ghost hunters who are talking about how they can, expel demons and,
Sure.
and shit like that. It drives me nuts. It makes me hot.
Or not knowing, how to properly, what the tools that they are using are actually doing. You know what I
Yes.
mean? I understand the instinct to to feel frustrated about that.
I think the difference is we also like to have fun too. You know what I
Sure.
mean? We
Yeah.
can kind of I can go out with the craziest dude imaginable and have
Yeah.
a great time, even if I don't believe a word that he's saying, as
Yeah.
long as he's not hurting people.
Yeah.
I think that's the line personally for me.
Yeah.
Randy, he wrote a book called The Truth About Uri Geller. And in that book is where he lays out how a magician would bend a spoon. How would that happen? We've got the Conjurer here. How does that work?
I'm glad you asked. The answer is you bend it beforehand.
Whoa.
Really taking the soul out of magic for us here.
That's the most common way to do it.
So
Yeah.
bending
And
bending
that's
it
what-
beforehand makes it easier for you to kind of manipulate because it's already been pushed around.
Yeah, it makes it pliable.
Got it.
And that is Randy's most common explanation
Okay.
for how he thinks that Uri's doing it. If you look at the spoons, most of the spoons that are bent at that weakest point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically the connector between the handle and the bowl.
The
Yeah.
neck,
The
you
neck.
might say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so that point, that neck of the spoon is, again, a very visual area, the splash effect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's also the weakest part of the spoon.
Gotcha.
And so that's the part that you're going to go after. If you make that part of the spoon kind of pliable, then you can actually still straighten it out.
Mm-hmm.
And you can even have a spoon in front of you and tap on it and be like, hey, I mean, this one's I already bent with my mind, but he can be like, hey, listen to how solid this is. And it's not going to collapse.
Yeah.
But once you put a little bit of motion to it, it starts to make that movement, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that's his most common explanation, is that he bent spoons beforehand. You could also even break the spoon beforehand, and you could just have the two pieces being held together by your little pinch.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right.
And
Oh, so
then
you're kind of moving
sort of
it?
doing that illusion. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to show you how I did my spoon?
Are you going to get in trouble with the Brotherhood for this?
Even just being here. Brotherhood's already waiting outside for me.
God, it looks so good. It looks so good. There's a spoon in Connor's fingers, and it's just like
I
bending.
just saw it right now.
Man, that looks so good, dude.
I just figured out how you're doing it.
So I've got two pieces of a spoon.
So the other half is tucked in into like the palm of your hand, like how you're
Actual
holding it.
area of the spoon is tucked in.
Ugh,
I
I only saw it now because of the way that the angle that your hand was at.
That's very smart.
You put the other
A false
on top of it.
spoon handle
Mm-hmm.
to make it look straight.
And then you just sort of like let
And so
gravity.
it's sitting up top. You pinch it, and then you just kind of slowly start to release it.
Wow. Oh, look at that.
Wow.
And then you do a little quick swap.
Look at that.
Wow.
Nice.
That's how you
Bravo.
can bend spoons at home.
Bravo.
Show your friends. Don't tell them who taught you.
All right, well, now that we know how that's done, we know we're in the mind of the amazing Randy, and
Yeah.
we can see that he thinks he figured out how Uri's doing these what he believes are illusions.
Mhm.
So, Uri's first really big event is he's on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Yeah. Like you couldn't be on a bigger mountaintop. at
No,
this
no,
point.
no. At the
Like,
time, like huge.
No way.
Like this is one of the biggest late night shows.
Yeah.
It is the late night show.
it's the late night show.
And he's booked to go there for what he believes is going to be an interview.
Yeah,
Well, they pull the rug out from under him.
they did.
Because Johnny Carson himself was a stage magician.
Yes.
In fact, if you're old enough to remember the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, you remember he used to do mentalism tricks every
Yeah.
once in a while.
Yep.
So him being a magician, he requested the help of James Randi to take this opportunity to show the world what they believed was a fraud. And when Uri shows up to the show, there's a plate of metal, and there's spoons,
Yeah.
and there's like canisters that are
Mhm.
holding like water and stuff in them. And they put him on the spot, and they want him to perform.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that they'll either, you can see, there's a really famous clip that you can watch. We'll have it in the show notes.
It's so cringy. Oh
They're
my god.
like leaned right down, watching every move he's doing, because they're trying to figure out how he does this.
Yeah.
And then reveal it to the entire world at the same time.
Yeah, they were trying to bust him basically.
Yes.
They put the pressure on him, and he's sitting in a chair, and he looks very uncomfortable for obvious reasons. And and everyone is sitting there, just like ready to bust this guy.
And you can tell when you watch it, Uri is incredibly uncomfortable.
I
And
actually feel really bad for him in that moment.
he chokes.
Yeah.
And he can't perform at all. And he says that the reason he can't is because everyone's against him.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious that they're sending him negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, he can't perform.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about earlier when you talk about comedians and you
Yeah.
talk about even lectures and things like that.
It seemed mean-spirited.
It seemed very mean-spirited.
Yeah.
But again, to be fair, you have to get into the mind of these magicians
Sure.
who believe that Uri is doing something unethical,
Yeah.
and they want to prove it.
Sure.
This actually backfires because people actually are very sympathetic to Uri
Yeah.
after this.
Yeah.
And so instead of it doing what Randy and Carson hoped, people are like, well, if he was a magician, he would have just done the tricks, right?
Honestly, it's not a terrible argument, is that if he was actually a magician, why wasn't he capable of just doing
Sure.
magic on that stage.
I mean, to the general public, that's all they believed.
Yeah.
Was like,
Just-
oh, well, he would have done it.
just
Like, we all
any
have
kind of
bad
magic.
days.
And you'd think that at this point in time, if he was a magician, and again, this is just me making an assumption, but you would think that if he was a magician, he'd have a backup plan for when this was going to happen, because
Yeah.
he had to have known,
Right.
thinking again, as a magician would think, somebody's going to put me on the spot at some point in time, and I
Right.
need to have a good backup for how to deal with this. And he didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't have any of that.
Uri thought that his career was over
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
that-
I think anyone would, because, like, again,
Sure.
that's the biggest show that you can be on in America.
Yeah. Well, he was invited on Merv Griffin right after that.
Yeah.
And then he had the career that we know him to have had.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting here with a signed bent spoon. I've got paraphernalia all over. He put out records. There's board games with his face on it. He's been on tons of television shows. Clearly, things worked out better
Yeah.
for Uri than he expected at that point.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Uri Geller everyone knows. That's the public Uri Geller. Everybody's they when they think of him and they know of him, they think of him bending spoons. If you're very skeptical, you probably remember that Johnny Carson interview. That's what we know of him.
Yeah.
But there's another side to Uri that is verifiably very weird.
Yeah. It's awesome.
And that's really the bulk of what we want to focus on today, because it's easy to get wrapped up in the bending of utensils.
Sure.
But Uri Geller was a spy. The 70s was pretty wild.
Yeah, it was.
We had Vietnam.
Bell bottoms,
There was all
cocaine, roller skates, disco balls, ELO.
pretty weird, but a lot weirder than most people know,
Yeah.
because we know now, thanks to declassified documents, that the CIA
Yeah.
recruited Uri Geller
Yeah.
for espionage
This
purposes.
is badass.
Uri Geller was a psychic spy.
Yeah, literally, like my dream. He's just living my dream.
It's insane.
Just mine and James Randy's dreams.
Well, I think it's more James Randy's nightmares. Can you imagine this whole time Uri Geller was working with the CIA and James Randy's like, this guy's a fraud.
And the CIA's going, shut the up, dude. Be
Yeah, they
quiet.
are. They're like, shut the up. Maybe we know why James Randy couldn't do anything.
Why did they kill him?
No, maybe he was like 70 something when he died.
Yeah.
No, I just mean like
something.
was he 90?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was
Hate
old.
keeps people alive. Hate will keep you alive
I guess
well
that's
into your
true.
90s.
Oh, that's true. There are documents from 1972 that were declassified that show for a fact that the Americans were recruiting and testing
Yeah.
Uri Geller to be a psychic spy.
Yeah.
In fact, we know because of these documents that Uri was working for the CIA, our guys. They were also working for Mossad,
Yeah.
which is Israel's guys.
Yeah.
And he was even doing espionage for the Mexican government as well.
Yes.
So this guy was globe-trotting.
Yeah. These are the ones that we know of.
That we know of.
Right. Yeah.
There's even stuff that, Uri dances around and says he's not allowed to talk about yet. But if somebody else mentions it, well, then he can,
Yeah.
he can't confirm or deny.
Yeah.
But he can talk about rumors he's heard.
I love that. He did, and he'll do it with a big smile on his face.
He gets a lot of joy out of that.
He
Yeah.
really does.
You can tell.
But the thing is that the CIA doesn't just hire anybody.
No.
You got to be tested first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was.
Most of the testing that we know about that was performed with Uri and on Uri was done by SRI, the Stanford Research Institute, in the 70s. We didn't know until fairly recently that the Stanford Research Institute was being funded covertly by the CIA.
Yeah.
So he worked with two people in particular,
Pudoff and Targ.
Hal Pudoff and Russell Targ.
Yes.
Names that should be very familiar to anybody who's ever been curious about ESP.
Yes.
You even see their names pop up when it comes to UFOs these days.
Yeah, they're both also the archetype of old grandpas.
They definitely are.
They've coined.
But they're cool old grandpas.
They are cool grandpas.
If James Randi was like the crotchety old grandpa who you
Yes.
never wanted to visit, you would have a blast
I love Targ.
with Putoff and
Yeah.
Targ. Geller was tested in some of the most rigorous tests ever performed on anyone who claimed psychic powers ever.
Yes.
And it happened at SRI.
Yeah.
So much so, in fact, that SRI even put out an official video all about Uri Geller's powers.
Yeah, and all of the testing that they did with him, which
Yeah.
was a lot. As you said, it was a lot of different kinds of things. They kind of put him through his paces, and he did a pretty good job, apparently, according to them anyway.
Do you think there's a reason why these guys in particular were interested in Uri Geller?
I mean, they're both physicists, right?
Mm.
So I would argue that, based off my limited knowledge, physicists are maybe the most likely scientific discipline to be willing to stretch their minds a little bit further
Sure.
than others.
Yeah, they're constantly looking at invisible things.
Yeah.
and how invisible things work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so maybe that's why.
Yeah.
They show him predicting dice correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I think he got 8 out of 8 rolls.
100% of the time.
That's
For
insane.
dice rolling, and
They
it
would
was
roll it in a little canister
yeah.
and put it on the floor and be like, what's the number? And he got it correct 8 out of 8 times.
Craziness.
Okay.
Okay, so already off to a good start.
Yeah.
This isn't spoon bending nonsense now.
Mhm.
Now it's like there are scientists who are watching you like a hawk.
Yeah, I don't even think that they really focused on the spoon bending when it came to what they were testing him for.
Not really.
They were really they were not really interested in some
No.
of the more, I don't know, visual or entertainment aspects of what his powers could do.
If you're thinking about it from their perspective, if you're actually thinking wartime,
Yeah.
it's unlikely that you're going to send this guy out in the field to bend a man's machine gun.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot more likely that you're going to need him to see what the enemy is up to.
Yeah, and that's
Yes.
so much more valuable. That's information that can be acted upon versus one guy bending people's guns. Like, he's gonna be working a lot.
Yeah.
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 He'd be shot and then he's gone.
Yeah, immediately. They're like, maybe we should have used him for something a little bit more
Yes, exactly.
actionable.
So he 100% of the time is able to guess what the dice has landed on
Yeah.
in these canisters. They did another thing with canisters where they took steel balls and they would put one steel ball in a group of canisters. And then without touching them, he would have to put his hand over it
Yeah.
and tell which one had the ball in it. And that one, I think he got, 12 out of 15,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah, I think so. Every time, and there were some that he passed on, to be fair. There were sometimes he'd be like, I'm not feeling this round. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then he would be, when he was willing to take a guess,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like a bigger deal. It was
Yeah.
like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right?
Yeah.
Where
yeah.
you're not just firing off answers, you're like pondering it for a little bit,
Mm.
Mhm.
and then you're being like, here's my answer.
Yeah.
That's really I don't. That feels weird to me. Like that feels more. Did you fucking see that?
Yeah.
What was that?
I've never seen that before.
All right.
Uri, if you're
I
here,
was literally just gonna say that you're real. I was gonna
Uri,
say you're real.
if you're here, if you're remote
believe
viewing
in
this,
you.
I want you to know we're coming down on your side in this one.
yeah.
He's alive, but apparently he can read people's minds.
He's
Oh
like, I
my
sense that
goodness.
there are people talking about me right now.
Well, that was one of the spookiest things that's happened during this podcast.
Okay.
The thing is, like, there have been a lot of storms around here lately, but all the lights dimmed.
It was
Yeah.
right when I cut wide.
Oh, man. Well, put
I'm
a pin in
scared.
that.
I'm scared.
Uri Geller's really cool.
Well, what I
His
was
powers are real.
Yeah. I was actually going to say that to me, it feels like he's being at least more authentic to his belief in his ability to read things.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like in moments where he's like, I'm just not feeling this. I
Yeah.
feel like he's respecting his powers versus like, if someone was faking it, it'd be a lot easier to be like, oh, I got that one wrong. You know what I mean? Like I feel like he's in tune with something a little bit more. That's just my take on that.
He was such a hit that the CIA guys were even like putting stuff in their desks and they were, asking him what's in there.
Yeah.
There's a great story by Kit Green, who worked for the CIA and when biological weapons and stuff like that, research like that, they got him on the phone. And, he was like, of course I don't believe in this stuff. Of course not. What are you doing? And somebody was like, oh, Uri's on the line right now. And he's like, say hi. And so Uri said hi. And then he's like, all right, what am I looking at on my desk right now? And he pulls out a book that he always has on his desk and he flips it open. And Uri does some remote viewing, basically. And he sits there and he sketches something out. Oh, your light just went out.
Shoot.
That's it. Well, it is what it is.
But the lights in the whole room dimmed, right?
No.
I heard it in my
It's
headphones.
just yours.
I heard my headphones go. Right.
That was just that.
When it happened the first time, I heard like in
Yeah,
my
I
headphones.
heard buzz.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
we'll just see what happens.
Right.
So Kit Green pulls out this book and he's looking at it. Uri, back in San Francisco, starts doing some remote viewing. And he's like, it's weird. I don't know. It looks like scrambled eggs. Looks like scrambled eggs, I guess. And so he draws this. It looks like scrambled eggs. And then right across it, he writes architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a striking word, architecture, over top of it. What convinced Kit Green that something weird was going on with Uri was open in front of him, like a sliced head.
Yeah.
And the brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what's in Connor's hands right now. Kind of looks like that. It almost looked exactly like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then across the top,
In his
of it,
handwriting.
in Kit's own handwriting, was architecture, because he was researching, like, the architecture of the mind and all
and
that kind of stuff.
and like a biological
warfare.
Yeah.
So immediately, something that shouldn't have happened.
Yes.
And all of these very serious, well-educated men
Yeah.
are believing in the powers of Uri Geller.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about it. It's one thing to predict something that might be in, a serious man's book that might be near his desk. But it's another thing to, like, have him written something with his own hands on a page and have that be part of what Uri was remote viewing. Is pretty astonishing.
There's
honestly.
a story too. I love it, that he had apparently predicted. He got a phone call at his house one day, and it was one of the way higher ups in the CIA. Wondered why he was calling him, and he just asked him what was on his desk and what he was holding in his hand. And Uri answered that it was a white dagger or letter opener.
Weird.
Apparently
And that
he
was
was
it?
correct.
Man.
Wow.
And the guy just was like, all right, thanks, and hung up,
Thanks for turning off my light, Uri. I know it's you.
One of the most famous tests that was done, one of the most visually striking tests that was done at SRI that you can see in this video, is Uri looking at black envelopes, sealed black envelopes, and then drawing what's inside of them.
Yeah.
And the answers are so striking,
Yeah.
that, like, even there's a set of grapes that one of the
Oh my God, it's incredible.
investigators drew and then put it in the envelope. Uri has the same amount of grapes.
He got the number of grapes right.
You can see, actually, we've got on screen, if you're watching the video, we've got a few of them on screen that show, like, that right there. There's the grapes that were drawn.
So
that
that's
was
the target.
And then look at what Uri drew.
It's so good.
Wild. And so they're extremely accurate.
That's approved for release. CIA document number so and so.
This is in a CIA document, y'all.
When you look at them too, it feels like he's done a version of, like, interpreting a dream.
Yeah.
In some of them, where it's like, I see there's one with, like, a stick of dynamite, right?
Yeah.
And in his drawing, he drew a giraffe, but the length of the neck is the same length as the stick of dynamite. So it's
Sure.
literally, it's like whatever he's seeing is like a dream-like version, and he's trying to
abstraction.
interpret it that way. So interesting.
We have to keep in mind,
Yeah.
no one at the time knew that SRI was being funded by the CIA.
Yeah.
They didn't understand this yet. This wasn't public knowledge. So every time that they would go to release something, they had to get it cleared by the CIA.
Yeah.
And the CIA was fine with them talking about Uri Geller's magic powers.
Yeah.
They actually were published in a bunch of articles in Nature,
Yeah.
of all places. The first one was Information Transmission Under Conditions of Sensory Shielding. That was in Nature. They also presented the results of the research at the Conference on Quantum Physics and Parapsychology in Geneva, Switzerland in 1974. The point being, this stuff that was happening at SRI was helping to validate who Uri was
Yes.
to the general public. Because again, they're releasing this stuff publicly. The CIA is letting them put these articles out in Nature. And then, Uri's out there doing late night shows and stuff like that too. But this is all happening before
He really popped off.
he popped off.
Yeah.
So in secret, behind closed doors, he's performing for the CIA.
Yeah. And the CIA is thinking, whoa, we scored. We really scored.
Well, I mean, I think that the implications here are the CIA being able to go, look, we have a superhuman.
Yeah.
We have somebody who's on our side who can look into the enemy's mind, who can see where their nuclear bases are and steal their codes with just the power of his mind.
Yeah, where their top military officials are, where all, like you said, where all the secrets are hidden.
Some of the books and documentaries talk about him being recruited to help find like a downed Russian aircraft because they wanted their communication codes.
Yeah, before they got it.
And they couldn't find the aircraft because it was in a jungle. It was under the canopy of trees. And so he helps them find that. That's the type of stuff that they were having Uri do functionally, not just, not just putting on a show for everybody.
Yeah.
And Uri talks about, too, being asked to do some pretty wild things.
Yeah.
At one point, he says, and this was, again, after it was declassified, so he was, quote-unquote, able to talk about it. He says that he was asked to take over the mind of a foreign pilot,
Yeah.
if that was possible.
Yeah.
And this is where the shout-out comes from with Men Who Stare at Goats. He was asked if he could stop the heart of a pig.
Yes.
And he refused to do it.
Yep.
And realized that they were probably just testing his warfare capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't want to set that precedent for them so that they knew, wow.
One of the things that Uri talks about in this documentary is he talks about when he was in the Israeli army, he actually killed a man. And it was the only time it had ever happened. And it made him rethink everything.
Yeah.
Uri is a vegetarian. He doesn't want to harm anything. And when they presented him with this pig and said, hey, we want you to stop the heart of this pig, it brought back memories. And he was like, this isn't who I want to be. I'm not a weapon.
Yeah.
And that is kind of where he drew the...
Oh.
I'm actually kind of getting chills now.
Uri's telling us he wasn't a weapon.
I mean...
Is this the Iron Giant scenario?
Yeah.
It's just the Iron Giant.
a gun.
Oh, no.
You guys
He
think
was the
your-
Iron Giant.
think your house is bugged, right?
I mean...
one time, I don't know.
We're talking about all the... Okay, well, welcome back.
Yeah.
Strange. Don't know what's happening with your light. It's very... I thought it burned out. I was like, oh, that makes sense. It burned out.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Back on now.
It's never done that.
Never
also.
done
Like
that.
we have had this thing on in every single episode.
No, they burn out, but they don't do that.
Okay.
He claims one of the things that he did the most was he would erase hard drives and floppy disks that were being used by KGB agents.
Yeah.
They would have them when they were moving information. They would have like these hard drives, big hard drives in briefcases.
Yeah.
And they would be clipped to their arms.
And he would sit behind them on a plane and just say, erase, 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 erase.
Just sitting
Erasing.
right behind them on the plane?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Doing
It's
what he
spy
did.
stuff.
Doing what he did in elementary school, staring at the back of their head
Mhm.
and saying, erase, 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 erase. And that was kind of what they wanted him for, is they wanted him to confuse the enemy. They wanted him to be able to read their minds, to erase their materials.
Yeah, to get them to put thoughts into their minds, because he was also getting them to sign certain documents and agree to certain things. And he was doing all of that by projecting that intention into their minds.
There's a story he tells, and there's actual pictures, right, that we looked at,
Yeah.
where what you're talking about is true. Getting him to agree to sign a nuclear arms
literally.
deal.
Yes. Like, and you
Leaning
see him
over the
Uri's there.
shoulder.
leaning over
Yeah.
these world leaders.
Why is he there?
Why is he there?
Because he's a spy, baby.
It's insane.
It's just like, what? I mean, they had to have been like, why is this guy here? And he's like, he was just going to do his spoon tricks at dinner. And then, oh, okay, he's pretty close to me while I'm signing this. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, what's going through their mind? It's very cool.
This shit must have drove James Randi insane.
Oh my god, yeah. This is creating the James Randi monster. He's just like,
This guy.
One of the documentaries that we keep referencing is called The Secret Life of Uri Geller, Psychic Spy, by Vikram Gianti.
Yeah.
Isn't the guy like an Oscar-winning documentary
Yeah.
filmmaker?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great documentary. You can watch the
It's very
full
fun.
thing on Uri Geller's website. We'll have it in the show notes. You should definitely check it out. It's really cool.
It has a lot of other shows' theme music in the background.
Oh my God,
I don't
everything.
really- Twin Peaks is in there. X-Files is in there. Star Trek is in there.
Blues Brothers is in there.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's a really cool documentary. I asked you guys after we got done watching it, if you had to give it a score, a 1 out of 10, like an IMDb rating, what would it be?
I said like 8.
Yeah,
I,
like a
I liked
7.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
7, 8.
Solid 7 or 8.
Yeah,
It's actually got like a 2.
because the skeptics.
Because the skeptics
Yeah, of course.
have all gone and done what Grandpappy Randy wanted and rated it as low as they possibly could. Doesn't deserve it, frankly.
No.
No matter what you think of Uri Geller, it's a pretty great documentary.
Yeah, it's a good documentary.
Yeah. 2017 is where a bunch more of these documents were disclosed.
Yeah.
These CIA documents were made public through the Freedom of Information Act.
Mm-hmm.
There is some absolutely insane stuff in here. So much so that I want to make sure that we read a passage from this book that talks about some of the stuff that people were experiencing when they were doing the SRI testing.
Yeah.
Because it is
God, it's wild.
straight up poltergeist phenomena,
Yeah.
Men in Black phenomena.
I feel like Keel would have died to have been involved in
Oh
this.
my
Like
God,
he,
I know.
could you imagine Keel being here, just like observing all of this high strangeness happening to all these people? Like it's incredible.
God, it's insane.
I am obsessed.
In The Secret Life of Uri Geller, page 39 through 50, if you have this book or you plan on getting it, you should absolutely read this through because
Yeah.
this is some of the craziest stuff that's never talked about. Nobody ever talks about the weird stuff that was going on at SRI while Uri was there. The events were first detailed in a fine 1997 book, Remote Viewers, by the author Jim Schnabel, who has written for Nature, Science, New Scientist, The Washington Post, The Guardian, The Independent. Basically, this guy, he wasn't a hack.
Yeah.
This is crazy. What was to become a mounting hysteria, practically a mass possession, began when one of the group, a security officer, Ron Robertson, was speaking on the phone to Geller, and Geller proceeded to, in mid-conversation, his voice having oddly changed and gone up an octave, give him a detailed prediction of 3 family dramas, all of which happened to the officer the following Saturday. Then, in the makeshift lab, an infrared camera started recording unexplained patches of radiation high up on a wall. Kodak, the film manufacturer, was discreetly asked to examine the results. The company could not even begin to explain them. Shortly afterwards, a tape recorder picked up a peculiar, unintelligible metallic voice, a voice no one had heard when the machine was on. When Green later examined the metallic voice tape, one of the few recognizable words on it was the code name for an unconnected top-secret project which he happened to know about, but nobody else had any inkling of. That was an EVP.
Yeah.
They're capturing EVPs.
Yeah. Of like also, again, words that no one else in that vicinity should have known.
You think that's weird? Here we go.
Yeah. That's like that's the normal stuff that happened.
As Uri became an occasional fixture around the laboratory, some members of the team and their families began to see fuzzy, gray, 3D hallucinations or visions, or something of miniature comic book style floating flying saucers hovering in the center of various rooms. Other visions, the scientists reported, in their mounting terror, took the form of giant birds.
Mothman.
Right?
Yeah.
Which would walk across their gardens, or in the case of one physicist, Mike Russo and his wife, the foot of their bed.
So a giant bird. They're seeing giant birds and UFOs. Literally, this
It's the
is just
Mothman.
Point Pleasant. Like,
It's high strangeness.
yeah, like you couldn't get better high strangeness.
EVPs,
It's like almost cliched.
prophetic visions of the future.
Yeah.
Like, this is all stuff that showed up in the Mothman prophecies.
Uh-huh.
Knowing that group hallucinations are extremely rare, and additionally, all the affected Livermore personnel, as part of their high security clearance, were known to be unusually stable psychologically. Unusually stable. What a funny way to put that. Green
I'm
doubted.
unusually unstable.
Green doubted that they were having hallucinations. He says, I was confident at the time as I am now that there was no psychiatric pathology, Dr. Green says. They were not psychiatrically ill, but that doesn't mean they didn't get scared to death.
One of my favorite stories, the one that really stuck out to me the most, and Keelan, when she was reading this, we're looking through this book, recognizing, oh my gosh, what is going on? You're going over like results of him guessing dice in a box.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's like, and then when more stuff was declassified and when we interviewed more people, we realized a whole bunch of really strange stuff was happening, especially this story. One of the last but most extreme of the phenomena appeared to a physicist named Don Curtis and his wife. It consisted of a holographic false arm in gray suiting material and was hovering in their living room, rotating like it was on a spit. The arm had no hand, but a hook.
So there's an arm floating in their living room, turning slowly.
Like a hot dog.
Like a hot dog. And he and his wife both witnessed this.
Floating hot dog arm.
So this is now something that's happening, like the bird, outside
of the lab.
Yeah, outside of the lab.
In their homes.
In their homes.
It's like the hitchhiker effect, right?
Yes.
Where something's coming with them now.
Uh-huh.
So Kit Green is staying in a motel in Livermore, right? Near the lab. And Targ and Puthoff basically went over to Green's motel room. They're talking to him. He starts talking to the SRI scientist, having by now clinically, this is from the book, clinically evaluated the affected scientist, the full bizarre story of what he'd been told was happening in the laboratory, the arm apparition, and hoping to extract a confession and draw a line under the crazy business. This is from Kit. I was demonstrably angry. I was demonstrably upset, and I raised my voice, and it was at that absolute instant when I told them about the holographic arm scenario, when I was pounding the tabletop, asking them what in the living hell was going on, and saying, what exactly do you guys know about this absolute bizarre nonsense? At that exact millisecond, an aggressive banging started on the room door and scared the living hell out of us. It was like somebody was trying to break down the door. By now, according to Puthoff, he and Targ suspected that Green might have been playing a practical joke on them. They're in Green's hotel room.
Yeah.
I love that it's basically at this point, it's that Spider-Man meme of everyone just pointing at each other.
No.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Well, and think that the atmosphere in the room,
They're
like they're getting
so-
heated.
yeah.
They're like pounding on tables. Like we talk about psychokinetic energy
Yeah.
and
I
like,
know why he said they thought it was them playing a joke is because they're the laser scientists.
Yeah.
They're like,
yeah.
Puthoff and Targ were like laser experts.
Yeah.
And he thought maybe he was doing holographic stuff in his living room.
Like
Right.
projecting something in there.
And he basically talks to him off hours and he's like, guys, what, like seriously, what's going on?
Yeah.
You're scaring my wife.
He's
We-
like,
we
real
get it.
dick move,
get
guys.
it.
Yeah.
Don't test our special weaponry on the people who work here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're talking in his hotel room, pounding at the door. And then this is continuing from the book.
This is the scariest shit. This scares the
I
shit
love
out of
it.
me. Oh my God. It's so scary. I love it too, but it's scary.
The CIA man answered the door to reveal a middle-aged man in a gray suit who wandered stiffly into the room, stood in between the beds, and said in an odd, slow voice, I guess I must be in the wrong room, before walking slowly out again. All three men noticed as he left that one sleeve of his suit was empty.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
It's a man in black.
Does that
Man
not
in
sound
gray?
like the most Twin Peaks, like
It's such a-
David Lynch
Yeah.
thing you've
Yeah.
ever heard?
It's Mike. It's the
Yes.
one-armed man.
It is.
Uh-huh.
Oh, God.
I mean, they finish it out by saying he just walked gently, slowly, carefully after pounding on the door like that. He said what he said. He walked out, and then they saw the pin-up arm of his suit. After 5 or 10 seconds, they all tore out of the room, one way, then the other. They all looked down the stairwell. They're looking for this guy, but he was gone. None of us felt like it was an apparition or some shape-shifting ghost-like cloud figure. It looked like an absolutely everyday, ordinary human being with nothing odd about him except that he was missing an arm that was pinned up in his gray suit sleeve.
That's like the craziest story.
Yeah. It's
and
perfect.
again, it's kind of the point of this episode is everybody thinks about Uri and they think about bent spoons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's so lame
No,
in
there's
comparison
so much more.
to all of the stuff that people experience,
Yeah.
no matter what you think about him.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
regardless.
really smart, intelligent people that experience some batshit stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, as always, we have to be balanced.
Uh-oh.
Let's put on the skeptic hat.
Put on our skeptic hats.
No.
Dana? Dana refuses. Well, there were skeptics.
There were skeptics. There were a couple of them, specifically of SRI, mentioning this because Puthoff and Targ did have their skeptics as well.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically 2 men, David Marks and Richard Kaman.
They wrote a Skeptical Inquirer article in 1977 that is called The Non-Psychic Powers of Uri Geller. And basically the whole point of it was to just bust up those SRI videos and talk about how, they were ill-prepared, the people weren't doing good science, there were ways that he could kind of cheese the results, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of that article.
Some of the thoughts that these people came to about how Uri might have been faking things, I think, are a bit of a stretch. There's one story about a little square kind of hole in the wall where the wires would come in. It was about 3 feet off the ground. And they came to the assumption that Uri was like peeking through this hole in the wall.
He was down on his hands and knees, like looking through this hole.
But they were, after the fact, everyone said, no, there was like a metal case that had been over top of it, kind of closing it off. So it wasn't possible that he could have been down. But so I feel like some of the assumptions that they were jumping to might have been a bit much.
That was the big one, is that everybody was freaking out about, is that he could draw those drawings in the sealed envelope so well.
Yes.
And so they're like, how do we crack this? What's going on?
Yeah.
Did he see them draw him in the other room?
Yeah. Is he peeking through that little hole?
Is he? I don't know. The other one that they thought is maybe he's seeing through the envelopes.
Yes.
Because what they did is they actually asked for the transcripts, right, of some of these experiments and experiences. And they found that Uri actually was quite commonly, he always had to hold the envelope. And they noticed that sometimes he'd hold it for like 8 or 9 minutes.
Yeah.
And they're conversing and he's chatting and he's being his charming self.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that it's possible that he was maybe looking for a good angle of the light to peek through.
Okay.
And to get a couple glimpses.
Right.
They observed, Uri went to, they're New Zealand scientists. What then happens is Uri is kind of like going on tour, and he goes to New Zealand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when he goes to New Zealand, he agrees to let these two skeptics observe him.
Yeah.
And they observe him for his like week-long tour, and then afterwards they're like, we're going to try and recreate some of this stuff.
The other thing we should mention is these weren't just 2 random guys. They
Yeah.
weren't just 2 random skeptics. These guys were very bright psychologists for the University of Otago in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So they were used to studying human psychology.
Yeah.
And Uri really fascinated them. And they were admittedly very open to the idea of psychic phenomena. They were real skeptics. They wanted to see if this was for real.
Yeah.
So they went into it with good intentions.
Which is great.
They weren't trying to be mean-spirited or anything.
That's awesome.
What they did is one time Uri allowed them to actually sit in and try and kind of not fully recreate it, but try the envelope trick, right?
Mm-hmm.
They sat down with him 9 times, and Uri went through them, and he only made an attempt to recreate the drawing in 3 of the trials, saying in the other 6 that he was too tired or he was unable to perform on command in that moment. Kind of like a Johnny Carson moment again.
Yeah.
In one instance, he tried 29 times, they said, to redraw his guess before he submitted the answer.
Oh, wow.
It's a long time. So
Yes.
they're kind of like, he's just shooting in the dark.
Right. One of the things worth mentioning, though, is that later, Marks, one of the guys from New Zealand, he became very skeptical of skeptics themselves.
Interesting.
He said he believed that leading members of CSI, which was James Randi's group,
Yeah.
and a lot of people who claimed to be skeptics were pseudo-skeptics, actually, because they never actually had an open mind to the possibility of the paranormal at all.
Yeah, so they're going in with that intention of just not believing anyway, regardless.
Yeah, if you've already gone into an investigation with your mind made up, you're probably going to come to that conclusion, no matter what. It's very hard to change your opinion on something like that.
Suck it, Randy.
So Marks was a good skeptic. He was one who had an open mind. He was open to the idea.
It's very cool.
He actually released a book in 2020. He's still around, called Psychology and the Paranormal, Exploring Anomalous Experience. And he actually has a theory in it that says that if paranormal experiences like telepathy and clairvoyance occur at all, they're spontaneous and without any control whatsoever, which is why self-proclaimed psychics like Uri
Mm-hmm.
can't perform on command.
Interesting.
So he kind of came around.
So it's as if he's saying like, this man has the ability to do this, but he doesn't necessarily have the ability to control it, which also
Potentially.
but that also makes sense because of how often Uri goes like, I'm not feeling it right now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I think it's building a case for him, honestly,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
All that said,
Kit Green somewhere going like,
literally.
that Jonah Hill
Yes.
gif of him going like,
Kit Green, when asked about this, he's a guy who saw this stuff. He saw Uri perform this. He's a scientist. He's a bright man. He said, quote, anybody who has studied Geller and seen what he does and the films of what he does recognizes there are profound differences between what Geller does and a magician's tricks.
okay,
Green's opinion is that if and when Uri was cheating,
yeah.
he was, as others have noted, he maybe was doing, he did so as a pretty amateur magician. Like, he really did not seem to be very skilled at sleight of hand and things like that.
Yeah,
That
okay.
is something that even Kit noticed.
Okay.
Which I think is pretty fascinating.
This is why it gets so confusing because we're just going back and forth and back and forth. Other magicians would say, well, that's because you're not a magician and you don't even know what a trick looks like.
Yeah.
Right? So they're like, it's constantly, no, I don't believe you. I think this is true. Maybe it's partially true. Gets very convoluted.
Even people at some people at the CIA were really distrustful of this because they would often be given documents about Uri and asked what they thought about this. They thought it was a test because there was no possible way this stuff could be real.
Oh.
They thought they were being tested about how gullible they were.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And they would just like ignore it and walk out because they
Yeah.
didn't want to fail this test. That's
yeah,
like,
they're I'm not dumb.
I believe in psychic powers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Meanwhile, they're like, no, really.
Exactly.
No, really?
Yeah.
He keeps guessing it. He keeps knowing
He knows
what's in the container.
I love that this is just like, this is it's a tornado of paranoid people
Oh, yeah.
with agendas
Well,
that
it's
are
the
like
CIA.
I mean, but with all of it, even like all of the hard ass skeptics and let's say everyone's trying to push their own agenda.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Uri Geller's in the middle of it going like, buy my board game. I love it. I love it. I love him
He's
so much.
making books for your mom at the same time.
Yeah.
I have one there, Greg, if you want to pull it out.
This is how
Let's-
to harness the healing power of your mind to transform your whole life. Lavishly illustrated throughout. This book includes an exploration of mind-body symbiosis, assessment of ancient healing wisdoms, insights into the nature of ill health.
This is
Oh,
right
boy.
up my alley.
Yeah.
It's heavy. Why is this book so heavy?
There's a lot of 90s pictures in there.
Oh,
80s,
man.
90s pics.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I think that used to come with a cassette, too. I think there was a
Okay.
cassette that used to come with.
Interesting.
Because I've seen that book around.
I love that so much.
So the point is, there's a public persona
yeah.
and there's another secret government
Yeah.
persona.
Yes.
And he was confusing people so much.
There's a couple different directions you could go. Is the CIA propping him up
Sure.
in order to like combat the Russians,
Yeah.
who they know are looking into, psychic spies?
Yeah.
I think at one point
They
the
had their
Russians
own.
had like 22 different laboratories
Yeah.
working on ESP and psychic soldiers,
Mm-hmm.
which was a big reason why we got into it.
Yeah.
Whether we were into it, earnestly, or just to basically say like, don't worry, we've got our own too.
Yeah, it depends on how conspiratorial you want to be, right? Like on one hand, you can look at it just at face value, and then on the other hand, you can look at it and go like, wow, that was a really interesting documentary I just watched that shows that this man has psi abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Why the F would the CIA release this to the general public and like, I don't know, show their whole ass to the country, like the whole world, you know what I mean? Is that a little suspicious?
I mean, it's mostly suspicious because it seems like his accuracy was real fucking good when he
Yeah.
was in the CIA funded lab.
Feels like
Yeah.
a weapons demonstration.
Yeah.
On purpose. Like
Mhm.
North Korea
Mhm.
releasing their videos of their military might. We're releasing one of our psychic super soldier.
Yeah.
Look
So-
how powerful it is.
Or maybe all of that stuff was actually real
Yeah.
and James Randi and the skeptics were the CIA plants to try to show that he was fake.
Maybe.
Oh, I like that one more.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Are you in possession of a haunted object? An antique spiritualist tool? Wreckage from a crashed UFO? The Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal wants to add it to their archives. Whether your strange item is causing you paranormal problems or is simply a supernaturally significant relic worthy of curation, we want to hear from you. For more information on our acquisition process, visit paramuseum.com.
Arguably the most valuable power that Uri could offer the military was the ability to remote view.
Yeah, dude. Like, could you imagine? You would be the most valuable person on the planet.
Yeah, for sure.
The most everyone would want you.
There's a lot of misconceptions about what remote viewing actually is. Typically, it's broken down into two types. There's the ERV, which is extended remote viewing.
Yeah.
And that's like when you're trying to get impressions of a target. So it's where you sit and you just think and you start to draw shapes and you start to think about like tastes and smells and feelings and textures, things like that. That's what I think probably most people think about when they think about remote viewing.
Yeah.
Then there's also CRV, which is coordinate or controlled remote viewing. That's more the military style type of remote viewing where you have a sender and a receiver, and the sender gives you a target number, like a series of target numbers, and you focus on those.
Yeah.
And you don't know where the target is. You don't know any of that stuff. And the point is to get accurate information out of that.
Yeah, because it's like they're not really looking for like abstract explanations. They want to know where the missiles are.
Exactly.
You know, or where this specific person is. Like
Yes.
they want that like hyper specific actionable intel.
Well, let's take it out of a non-military context too. This could also be used by somebody who wants to know where the TV remote is.
Or that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Possible.
If you want an easy way to contrast the two, ERV is looking for impressions of the target. CRV is looking for the locale of the target.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's a good way to separate those two. The military invested a lot of time and energy into training psychic soldiers, people who could remote view. We didn't find out until much later, but there was an actual government project called Project Stargate.
Yeah.
And this was where all of this stuff was happening. Black Project. It's a lot of what The Men Who Stare at Goats is based on, is the Project Stargate stuff. This was declassified in the 90s. Project Stargate, we didn't know about this till the 90s, and they were working on this stuff for a long time. I was partially a response to the Soviets and their explorations into the idea of remote viewing and psychic spies and stuff like that.
If they were doing it, we needed to be doing it too.
Yeah, no, they were very concerned that the Russians were going to have a psychic weapon.
Yeah.
And they did not want to be left behind.
Nope.
So it was partially that. It says here, actually, I was wrong earlier. The Soviet Union had 30 government-run parapsychological laboratories, supposedly, during that time period. And think about it, America officially had none.
Yeah.
Many of these guys who were part of Project Stargate, they're still around. You hear them on radio shows every once in a while, late-night radio shows. Some of them teach remote viewing. You can actually go to them. They'll teach classes. They've got books. They've got lectures, all that kind of stuff.
I'm going to take a class.
I think I want to too.
Let's do it. Let's do it,
We
Connor.
should.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
There was a group of remote viewers who did remote viewing on Hellier.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys remember when this
Yeah.
happened. And it was awesome.
It was so scarily accurate.
Yeah.
Like bonkers accurate.
Yeah.
With just a target number.
Yeah.
They didn't see Hellier. None of them knew about it. They normally remote view cryptocurrency trends, which was very funny.
Yeah.
But they ended up remote viewing, even though none of them knew anything about Hellier, just the target number. I mean, it is clear as day.
Yeah.
Very obvious. There is the tunnel.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about it.
Yeah. They even got a detail that is so creepy, which is that the tunnel, we didn't realize that that area actually floods
Yes.
with water because we were there
In the fall.
and they captured one of them was managed to like figure it out like at a certain time.
They captured a waterfall that we didn't even know was there.
We went back
until we visited it in the spring.
and we were like, "There's a waterfall right here." Like we had no idea.
It's nuts.
But the remote viewers knew.
Oh, there's even one image that is absolutely Tyler.
Yeah, I
Like
think there's
Tyler
one
Strand.
of me too.
There's one of you too, and there's other spooky stuff that we haven't run into yet that I kind of hope we don't.
Yeah.
It's a strange timeline. And those are supposedly, that's where it gets a little bit stranger too. You're remote viewing the future, possibly.
Yeah, you don't know.
It's a little odd.
Yeah.
If you're remote viewing something like cryptocurrency, or you just remote viewing like the future intentions of people that buy or sell.
Yeah, that's
I
weird.
guess.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's weird.
It's odd.
Well, these guys are all directly downstream of the Project Stargate folks. Like this is who they were trained by.
I mean, they basically started it, right? So
Yeah.
Bingo, Swan, Putov, and Targ.
Yep.
Of course, there was some early stuff. Back in the day, they used to call it, what was it? Telepathic clairvoyance.
Traveling clairvoyance, which is the cool.
cool.
Can we bring that back, please? Because that's the coolest descriptor. I'm
Yeah.
a traveling clairvoyant.
So there was a little bit of hints way back in the spiritualist movement, but now this is like, here's a serious protocol.
Yeah.
Started in the 70s with Project Stargate and all of them.
It's awesome.
There's a lot of really cool stories that came out of these experiences. Connor, you dug up a really interesting story.
I listened to, I want to say 5 different podcasts of these guys, and they're all just like 80 years old, kind of talking into a Zoom microphone, like talking about, oh yeah, I was inside the Kremlin telepathically, and you're just like,
God, I love this so much. Just a bunch of grandpas doing it.
What's going on? And so there was one specific story that had to do with the Kremlin. It was from the remote viewer Bill Ray, who was part of the program. Lynn Buchanan also has some interviews out there. He was one of the main guys. And Bill Ray is doing this interview saying that he remote viewed inside the Kremlin, was told to go to a specific area to find out what's in that room. And he didn't know where the room was. And so he apparently walked up to this guy who was running a kind of like an in-office coffee shop, like inside the Kremlin, like they have. And he walked up to the cart and he was like, "Can you tell me where this room is?" And he started talking with this man inside of his remote view.
So he's
his
projecting
astral body.
his astral body, but a physical man
And the
saw
guy
him and communicated with him.
started talking to him and was like, "Oh, you're not allowed to go there." And he had to try to convince him to tell him where that room was.
That's so.
And he doesn't know what that actual interaction might have been like.
Do you think that he appeared to the man in the Kremlin as a gray man in a suit?
Maybe missing.
Maybe.
Ooh.
So it was there's some really good stories out there.
That's awesome.
I'll link to a couple of them.
That's cool.
I joked, I told Greg, I was like, one of them was a Catholic podcast. They're into it.
That's
They're
so
into
cool.
weird stuff.
I love
So
that.
there's little tinges of it, but not all branches of Christianity are.
Oh no.
This is actually a funny detail.
It's a bummer detail, I would say.
Project Stargate was officially shut down in 1995.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people who were involved in the project believe that it was because one of the new heads of the CIA was evangelical
Yeah.
and believed that this stuff was all like messing with,
The devil.
the devil and shit like
It's
that.
It's like a couple senators, I think, too, got their
Yeah.
fingers in there. It's like, oh man. And there it went.
Bummers.
Or did it just go black?
I.
Which means it's just in the general fund.
Well, and what's funny, a lot of the old guys say it's still, well, they don't say it because they're not allowed to,
Yeah.
but they kind of hint that the
Yeah.
project never stopped. And if you read The Men Who Stare at Goats, one of the things that John Ronson finds during the research is that they, Black Ops spun it back up after 9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So-
they said that like pretty much every country did, right? They
Yeah.
all started basically like gearing that back up
Yeah.
again.
In one of the interviews, they hint a little bit at that, and then sort of as examples, we're like, I mean, think about practical applications, not just finding weapons of destruction or something, but also, should my platoon walk down this alleyway?
Yeah.
Or is there a mine there?
Yeah.
Earlier today, Connor set us down and had us actually perform some remote viewing ourselves. And we did it the way that a lot of the old guys did it. We used the Gansfeld experiment with it too, because it kind of helps you get into that nice headspace where you can kind of zone out. You stare into a red light and you listen to white noise.
The isolation is nice.
Yep. You just kind of go there. And we pulled out the impressions, tried to get ourselves nice and relaxed. And you don't even know, or at least you didn't until very recently, what we were trying to remote view.
Yeah. So I sent Keelan, our friendly neighborhood cryptozoologist, out into the wild.
Yeah.
And she is off on the East Coast.
Yep.
Or in Cincinnati.
Yep.
She went somewhere.
Yeah.
And you were trying to see where Keelan was.
Yes.
See through her eyes what's
Yes.
around her.
She's at least 10 hours from us.
Yeah.
Where we're at right now. A 10-hour drive at least.
She's in New England.
Yes.
So do you want to say what some of your, you summarized it in the video, but just your basic impressions? Maybe Dana first.
I tried to start with letting myself sort of see colors and shapes and just let it kind of transform in front of me. And there was a bunch of different things that I saw. I saw a white gazebo, kind of.
Yes.
I saw a lighthouse, but it didn't feel like a full-size lighthouse.
Did you say lighthouse?
Yeah.
No way.
I
She
drew,
actually
I
said
drew
lighthouse?
a lighthouse. I saw. It wasn't like I didn't think it was a full-size lighthouse. It was smaller. I saw a chain link fence. I saw a road. I thought, okay, am I in a cemetery? Because it felt like.
Did she say this stuff when I was out of the room? Oh, get the out of here! How
Why
in
did
the
you
world?
say that?
Yeah,
You said a cemetery.
I said the cemetery. I said a lighthouse. I said a fence. Connor had us both go out of the room, and then one by one came in, and he kind of interviewed us about that.
I didn't want to jump to too many conclusions because that was one of the things that was suggested. It's like, if you see a round shape and you see the color red, don't assume it's a red ball. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So I was trying not to like put my own intent, like my own thoughts into it, but I felt strongly that it was outside.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Mine was very similar to that.
Yeah.
Where, I drew like something that was round that had circles on it. I didn't really know what to make of that. I thought maybe it was like a wheel rim.
Yeah.
I did get the impression that maybe I was by railroad tracks because I was seeing like what I thought were trains passing and then almost like a tube of light.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, wait a second. What if it feels like, because it felt like it kept coming and I got the feeling that I was moving forward. And then I was like, well, that light just keeps coming back rhythmically, like it's spinning. So I was like, oh, okay. So maybe that's a lighthouse. I saw look like a stone with maybe like something chiseled in it, maybe a landmark. And then I thought, well, maybe that's a cemetery. Could have been a cemetery because there's lots of stones. I saw a face, but it felt like a death mask. So it didn't feel like it was a person. It felt like maybe it was
Like
a statue, marble statue or something. And then I got like a lot of stuff where maybe I thought were waves or foam or clouds.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm
really
I was
actually
like,
startled that we both kind of went to some of the same places here.
I was like, is this a museum? Because I remember just seeing things.
Connor's over here grinning ear to ear.
We have no idea.
Because I know the answer.
And what is so funny is because
We have
the way
literally
that
no idea.
the way that honestly none.
I'm so
and it's
sorry.
almost
Seriously, no, like honestly, we had no idea.
No,
like, I will,
Connor
like,
didn't even know.
Swear on George's life.
Yeah.
Like we didn't know where she went.
Yeah.
And then she sent it to me
honestly,
couple of hours ago.
It's almost frustrating because a couple hours ago I was making dinner, and this was, I don't know, an hour after we had finished. And Connor's looking at his phone and he gets the email and he just starts smiling and laughing. And I was like, what is it? He's like, I can't tell you yet. I can't tell you yet.
so
We got to wait till we
weird.
record. So I don't know if we did extremely bad
really
and that's
good
why it's
or
funny,
really bad.
or if we did surprisingly well.
All right, do you want to see where Keelan was?
Yeah.
I'm stoked.
So you have photos of where she physically was.
Hmm.
Oh,
my
get out of here.
It
Water?
looks like a cemetery.
It does look like there's a
It's like
face.
stone.
Oh my God.
There's
Oh my
Keelan.
God.
That's
And
so weird.
It looks kind of like a lighthouse, right? It's tall,
It
it's
looks
thin.
like a lighthouse.
It looks
my
also like a
God.
cemetery.
It does.
And it's marble with inscriptions
Oh,
and a frozen face on it.
It makes sense that you would think that was a cemetery too, because it's like etched in, like that looks like a piece from a cemetery. Like it looks like a headstone from a cemetery.
Dang, dude. Did we just remote view pretty well?
I think we did like
Just remote
okay.
viewed.
I think we did like.
And guess what's across the street? A river.
Oh, no
my
joke.
God.
You know, I don't want to pull too much from that, but wow, I was amazed at the impressions of the similarities of a cemetery.
Wow.
Here's a little video.
Oh,
That
dude.
literally could just be a headstone.
And look at it's in a round
It's in a circle.
circle.
All of these things just look like like a park we got outside.
There's the gazebo! Oh my God, that's the gazebo!
Oh my God.
Oh my
The
God.
gazebo's just chilling back there.
She didn't even take pictures
I
of the
friggin'
gazebo.
Drew it. I drew the gazebo too.
Dude, are we going to be psychic spies?
Yeah!
Yeah, dude.
This podcast.
All right. Hal Putoff,
Yeah,
Kit
recruit
Green,
us. Let's go.
we're coming for you.
Oh my God.
We want you to train us. We know Project Stargate is still going on. We want in.
Mutant
I want in
powers.
on Project Stargate or whatever the you're calling it.
Mutant powers.
See that?
Dude, the white gazebo was back there.
How in the world did you see that gazebo?
I
Yes.
drew it. I
Here's
friggin'
the
drew
other
it.
angle.
Dude.
I was amazed.
Shut your face. I saw a garbage can at one point too, and I didn't say it out loud. Oh God. There it is.
There it is.
Oh my God.
What
Dude.
the heck?
Our powers together.
Remote viewing is real.
It's real. We both saw the same shit too.
Oh my God.
Okay, so I have here 12 black envelopes that each have a basic doodle inside of them,
Yeah.
just like they did with Uri. right?
Yeah.
And so what you're going to do is you're going to choose one of these envelopes, just like he did, hold it, experience it, and then attempt to draw what's inside
Got
Okay.
it.
based off your impressions.
Okay.
The way that these were selected, I have a friend at work named Stephanie, who's an artist. She's very good at drawing.
Shout out Stephanie.
Shout out, Stephanie. Thank you. And we had a break, and I asked her, hey, can you do something a little bit strange for a little bit? Can you open up this dictionary to random pages and pick a word, which is how Putoff and Targ used to do it.
Yeah.
Pick a word and then draw a basic doodle of that word.
Mm-hmm.
And she did that. I don't know what's inside these envelopes either.
Oh, great.
So maybe I'll draw a picture too.
Yeah. Do
Yeah,
this one
do
with
that
us.
One, and we can show what's going on.
Yes.
Okay.
This one. Okay. It is sealed.
I'm going to project myself into this envelope.
Mm.
I'm going to project my sight into the envelope.
Interesting.
These are simple drawings, right? They're not like...
No,
Okay.
they're like a second grader could do it.
Okay. I'm just going to draw like shapes that are coming to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's about as good as
I just kind of jumped in, I think.
Yeah.
I just kind of jumped in the pool,
Yeah.
got what I could.
Yeah, I mine are so random, but like...
So, for the reveal,
Okay. Oh. This is a golf club.
Weird.
All right. Okay. Definitely did not get a golf club in there.
No.
Okay.
All right.
It's a... But like...
Oh, Dana, that's pretty goddamn
So
close.
this was the initial thing that popped.
Dana!
What the heck?
Dana! What? You got that's literally
How is this working? I don't understand.
we have more envelopes, right?
No, there's too much pressure now. There's
so many
too much
more.
pressure.
It's a ladle.
You drew a ladle of
This is
Accidentally?
this is all I saw, and then I was like, "That's not a thing," and I put the pressure on myself, and then I was like, car." But see, this is the weird thing. It's your instinct. You have to learn how to follow your instincts.
Okay.
That's
how. It's so funny because we've been doing
What
these
the
remote viewing experiments in the museum for the museum members for a couple years now. It started during the pandemic. And everybody's always like, dude, every time Dana does this, it's crazy. It's like she's telling a story, like she's seeing something. There's just no way. But this is one of the first times we've really done
tested it.
like an actual controlled
yeah.
tests. So seeing this is blowing my fucking gourd.
Dude, that's so weird. You know what we should do? We'll post our draw, because as we were doing the remote viewing sessions, we had a clipboard in our lap.
Yeah.
We had our eyes covered, our ears we were listening to white noise. You'll see the video, I'm assuming. We drew as we were actively remote viewing.
Yeah.
And so
Poorly.
badly. But wouldn't it be cool to post it for Patreon
Yeah,
members
we'll post
to
it in the
see the
Patreon.
actual drawings?
If you want to see the stuff explicitly, check out the Patreon. Patreon.com/Paramuseum.
Yeah.
If you want to support the show and you want to see cool stuff.
And do fun experiments like remote viewing with us.
We literally do like remote viewing experiments all the
Dude,
time. But we don't do them that are like this well controlled.
No.
So Connor and Keelan put together a really well controlled one. Normally it's, I guess, closer to psychic questing. This is
Unbelievable.
crazy, dude.
That's wild.
Well, thank you for one of the coolest experiences of my life.
You're welcome.
Jeez.
You did it. And
yeah, but
so I wanna bring this in and say, based off of what I've heard, and I'll recommend a couple of podcasts and stuff too. There's a real nice, big, long, astonishing legends with a woman who trains remote viewers, who was trained by Lynn Buchanan.
shout out Astonishing Legends.
Shout out Astonishing
Excellent
Legend.
podcast.
And that's what I sort of trained you guys up on too. I told you the same kind of tips. You should listen to the whole thing, but in summary, if you want to remote view at home,
Yeah.
and you're somebody who wants to take part in this as well, some of the tips are to realize that your subconscious mind is psychic, but your conscious mind is not. So you need to try to separate yourself as much as you can, whatever that relaxing state is for you. So they said some people listen to music. Some people just treat it like it's a day job and they're sitting at a desk and it's some sort of relaxing environment.
We use the Gansfeld experiment.
You did Gansfeld to zone out. Some people meditate. A few guys who are in Project Stargate listen to like pump up music.
Oh,
like
that's
they're
interesting.
like going on a mission.
Oh yeah, like it gets them like they're actively like okay.
Can you just imagine these like guys sitting there listening to "I Got the Power"?
I know.
Just doing the Running Man.
That's great. What Lori Williams, this woman, talks about is one of the first things you need to do is try to find what she calls the signal line.
Mm-hmm.
The signal line is sort of that invisible tether that exists between you and your target. Imagine that we're all spokes on a wheel, and you have to head into the hub of the wheel first in order to go somewhere else, right? Visualize as if you're shining a flashlight around a darkened room. You don't really know what's in front of you, but you're just getting glimpses and glimpses and glimpses.
What's funny about that, just to add real quick, every time I've ever done any remote viewing stuff, it's almost like that exactly, because I only get glimpses. I think I even mentioned it. It feels like I'm looking at one little piece of a puzzle and trying to extrapolate the rest of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But it feels like I'm looking through a keyhole.
Yeah.
And I can't really see what's going on because something keeps moving in front of the keyhole.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Another thing is don't draw conclusions as much as you can help it.
That's helpful.
Go by initially the first thing, and this is like some of the very first introductory courses, is like you're just drawing lines. Like you're just drawing the textures of things, and you're just sort of, it's real easy to say, oh, this is a wave, but it could be a thatched roof, you don't know. So just go off of textures first, and then work through your senses, work through the smells, work through the sounds, and write down impressions. And then you start to hone it in.
Wow.
Might work.
I think it does.
I don't think might.
I mean, Maybe I'm biased.
It works.
Oh my God. Well, the skeptics have to come in and say it doesn't. Right here, let's talk about this, get this out of the way.
Yeah.
The skeptics believe that remote viewing doesn't have tight enough controls and it's not repeatable enough, so it can't be real. There's constantly historically criticized for lack of proper controls and repeatability. They also say that too much irrelevant information is stated, which I think you can see in us. Like, there's some stuff that doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, I guess I can now, looking at it, I see that there's traffic nearby. So those train cars are probably just cars that are going by.
I saw a little black dog. I mean, it's a park. There's probably a black dog. Somebody walking their dog in that park.
Right. There wasn't a clear, like, picnic bench.
Yeah.
Like Dana
Yeah.
saw.
Yeah.
There's no light. I didn't see a tube of light anywhere.
Right.
You know, but the impression is like, well, there's something tall. It's a lighthouse. I don't know.
The other thing is that it's kind of like doubly blind impressive. Maybe not quite, but close. Is that you both did it and you both saw a towering structure with inscriptions.
That's so weird.
That seemed like a headstone.
That's so
with
weird.
Like a closed face.
It's so weird too, because when we were doing it, I was looking up at this figure, but my brain kept trying to tell me it can't be like a lighthouse. It has to be like, I was looking up at it as if it was a large object, but my logical mind kept saying maybe it's small. My logical mind kept getting in the way, and I'd be like, no, but I'm physically looking up at it. Why would it be small?
And it was a good environment too, I hope, because Keelan's all into it. I'm sitting here like, oh yeah, they're going there.
Yeah.
I don't even know where you're going, but there you go. They found it. You know, it's that positive affirmation.
You know what's funny? Now, again, thinking about it, the face was on the statue.
Yeah, it's
that
on
was
the
way
statue.
up tall, and the only way to see that face is if you're looking up at the clouds. I saw
Yeah,
clouds
foam.
too.
You said foam and like
Yeah.
That's exactly what it would look like.
And I told Keelan to walk around, experience the location.
Yeah.
Don't just sit there on your phone.
Anyway, the fucking skeptics don't think it's real.
Yeah.
They
Too bad. Did they missed out on watching this thing that we just did?
We're trying to be all balanced, and we're like, well, we kind of just confirmed it for ourselves pretty well.
I mean, it's hard for me to go back now and be too overly skeptical about it. I try to be middle of the road until I
Yeah.
experience it myself.
I want to get better at it.
So the advice that you gave me today, of like thinking about traveling down the spokes to the center of a wheel, and that was actually really helpful. So obviously, we all just need to take a class so we get better at it. Yeah, because we are psychic.
Or recruit us into Project Stargate.
Wow.
Just go ahead. We're showing you our potential right now.
Literally.
Just recruit us. We're just asking to be recruited by the CIA.
I know.
You never know.
Leave a comment down below.
Yeah. Does the CIA have an official YouTube channel?
I hope so.
If you work for the CIA and you need some remote viewers who are into weird shit,
Yeah.
come on.
It would be incredible if the CIA were the first people to comment on our video and they just wrote first.
the CIA's official account.
I saw this 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I was listening while you recorded this. Duh.
That's why the light went out.
I was in the lamp. I was
This
in the lamp.
episode has been weird.
Seriously, we're talking about weird poltergeist phenomena in the labs.
It was when we were talking about like creepy Men in Black stuff too.
That happens. We actually remote viewed, which, like, I gotta be honest, I thought it was going to be comically
I did too.
bad.
Yeah, I did too. I was like, it's gonna be like.
But I gave it, like, I really tried.
Yeah, I did too. Obviously.
Obviously. Jeez, man. All right. Well, now we've experienced this. How in the does this work? How do we think that this works?
I don't know how it works. I won't pretend to know how it works. I can come to my own conclusions. I think that we have something baked into us that is still part of that like communal. Think of it this way. When we look at like School of Fish, or we look at like birds flying in the sky, there's some sort of like, there's something within them that, instinctually allows them to kind of move together as like one kind of organism. at some point in our evolution, we had to have had more of those types of instincts instilled within us for protection.
Yeah.
For staying within our village and working together. Like there just has to be something. And again, I'm saying this as a complete lay person, but there's part of me that thinks that that instinct still exists within us and we have the ability to tap into it. And the idea of kind of extending ourselves astrally, it's literally just a ripcord. You know what I mean? Like we're just kind of extending ourselves beyond our physical bodies, traveling elsewhere, trying to understand without the help of our physical bodies where we are, what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, which often is abstract and kind of confusing. And we have to learn how to see it better, understand it better. And then we just, boom, we hit the button and pop right back into our bodies again.
What do you think, Connor?
I tried to think about it hard and figure it out. Some people that are smarter than me talk about something called quantum entanglement theory, which is way over my head, about how particles, even though they're separated by centimeters or even light years, are acting simultaneously with each other.
Spooky action at a distance, Einstein called it.
Einstein couldn't figure it out because it would have had to have, the information would have been traveling faster than the speed of light, you know?
Yeah.
So you try and put on your like scientist cap and be like, well, what's going on here? But in the end, you're just like, there is a group consciousness here.
That's what I think.
When we're all, that's sort of where I'm at right now. Maybe after the classes, we'll be somewhere else. But it's like, if you're an empathetic person, if you're like a kind person, I think maybe it can be like, oh, I'm feeling something that maybe you're feeling, or I feel this for you. It almost is in that same kind of category, but it's where it's like, lend me your eyes for a moment.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Let me see where you're at and what's going on around you. This isn't ESP. This isn't predicting the future. This is just zooming in on somewhere you're not for a moment.
Yeah.
And you have to be as non-biased as possible, which is hard, but man, it's possible.
I think it is. You know, I am a big fan. I think I've talked about this on the show before. If anyone's ever come to one of my lectures, I talk about this guy all the time. I'm a really big fan of Michael Persinger. He was the late Michael Persinger. He did a lot of work on the brain's electromagnetism and the fact that we are electric beings. Like we have electricity and we are affected subtly by electromagnetic waves. As someone who's been a paranormal investigator for 20 some years now, you know, I think I have a good idea of how ghosts are interacting with us. And I think it all has to do with the electromagnetic spectrum. I really think that there's something to that. UFO sightings, miracles, all that stuff, they happen in places where we are somehow in connection with this electromagnetic field that surrounds the earth. That's what Michael Persinger believed. And he believed that it took about 7 minutes for us to upload and download something from whatever that electromagnetic field is. And that it is big enough to store the data of everyone who has ever lived. It would explain psychic powers. It would explain ESP. It would explain remote viewing even. If you can literally tap into that thing and then you are on a 7-minute delay and you're seeing what somebody else was seeing on the other side of the world.
7 minute would be average.
That would be the average, 7-minute delay.
Keelan was in that location for an hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who knows?
I don't know.
I mean, some people will be like, oh, it's you're seeing through angels. Some people are like, oh, you're tapping into something
You're doing
way up there.
There's some people that would say what you're doing is evil.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, I got to admit, came into this episode slightly skeptical about Uri's powers.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, if I can remote view, I don't see any reason why Uri Geller couldn't remote view.
Yeah.
So if there's truth to something, like I don't know the trick to bending a spoon, but I just remote viewed.
Yeah.
Fairly successfully.
Arguably way cooler than bending a spoon.
Way f***ing cooler than bending a spoon.
Way cooler.
Keep the party trick,
Also,
man.
way more useful than bending a spoon.
It's true. So I gotta say, I'm coming around on my belief in Uri Geller.
Yeah.
we feeling like Uri might have been able to do what he was saying he could do.
Yeah.
My mind is a little bit different now
Yeah.
than it was before.
Mhm.
What about you,
Yeah. Yes.
Connor?
Yeah, I seems kind of real.
Really does.
It's very easy to read skeptic articles on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that we made a practical application and we're going to try it ourselves. And I
Yeah.
want everybody who's here with us to try it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just do the
Yeah.
same thing. Try it.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I am scared now.
I'm stoked. Okay, so I think we're all on the same page. Remote viewing is real.
Yeah.
And Uri Geller, while he was a big, weird, wild figure, maybe couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Like, why lie when you could just do it?
Yeah. And I think that the thing is, Uri lived a very big, weird life.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to look at people like that who are larger than life,
Yeah.
who are involved in all kinds of weird things, and just think that it's all for show. It's easy to go, okay, Uri was an illusionist, or, we can make all kinds of claims
Mm-hmm.
because he wasn't always right. We did a few other experiments today, and we weren't always on the money, but there were some times when Uri was really wrong.
Yeah.
For example, in 1997, Geller put out energy-infused crystals
Yeah.
behind the goals at Football Club Exeter's grounds to help the club win a crucial end-of-season game.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up losing the game 5-1.
Oh.
So not a win
Yeah.
for Uri. He also stated in an open letter to British Prime Minister Theresa May he was going to stop Brexit.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
No.
I mean, I'm sure everyone wishes he
Yeah.
had stopped Brexit.
Yeah.
But
At
maybe
least you
people,
tried early. Uri, at least you tried.
the Tories were just way too negative. They blocked it. All their negative intentions blocked it.
Just like the Suez Canal was blocked. And he tried to get the ship out.
Tried to get the ship out and it didn't work.
There was one instance where he was asked to find a kidnapping victim and predicted that she would be found safe, and she was not.
Oh,
So-
that's always kind of
That's
embarrassing.
like
When he's
Sylvia
asked.
Brown territory too.
Yeah.
That'd be-
Yeah.
That's kind of dark.
That's interesting, though, because he typically shies away from stuff like
Yeah,
that. He doesn't
that's-
really do, like, psychic medium stuff. He doesn't do, like, healing or anything like that, which is part of the reason why I have such a soft spot for him.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this before. I'm not the biggest fan of psychic mediums.
Yeah.
Because,
That's an understatement.
yeah. Even if, for some reason, they're trying to contact somebody's dead loved one,
Yeah.
and they're paying money for it, and,
Sure.
it can hurt people.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel like Uri really hurt people a lot,
I don't think so.
not intentionally. Like, he seems to have taken...
Except for that one guy he killed.
That's true. He did shoot a guy.
Yeah.
That was in a war.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Okay.
He doesn't eat animals.
Yeah.
He's a vegetarian.
He seems like that experience has turned him into a very peaceful person.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. But as we're seeing, not always on the money.
Yeah.
Even when he's trying.
Don't you think it would be super suspicious if he was always accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
I'd be
true.
I'd be like, I mean,
It's true.
with good measure, I think we should be suspicious of people like that.
For sure. I think another reason that a lot of people don't always trust him fully is because, I mean, James Randi really damaged his reputation a lot, but he's also kind of eccentric.
Yeah,
he's got a car with spoons glued all over it.
He's an artist.
He is an artist. I think that's a good way to look at that.
Artist soul. You can tell he is eccentric. He is strange and interesting, and he is an artist, I think.
I will show you one of my prized possessions. I love this so much, and no one ever really gets to see the coolest part about this. I actually won this in a contest. I don't know. We just moved to Cincinnati.
Yeah, it was like 2012, 13,
something like that.
13.
So it's at least a decade ago. He had this contest on I think it was Facebook, and he was like, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100, and I guessed the number, and he sent me this, This is, actually, I'll take it out of the frame here so you can see it better.
Do you remember what the number was?
I can't remember. I probably have the
Cool.
stuff somewhere. This is a signed, for Greg, my best wishes, Uri Geller. But what's even cooler is art. He has there's hand-drawn art by him in the back. And this is kind of the style of stuff he would draw all the time.
It's so cool.
I don't know what it means.
Very cool.
No
it's like
clue.
a person looking at some kind of psychic impression.
Yeah,
maybe?
but it's signed by him.
That's so cool.
I love it's just one of my prized possessions because it's so weird. I got it in such a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
it's
neat.
funny that we get to talk about Uri today after doing a successful remote viewing experiment.
Mhm.
And I like it so much more now.
Yeah. I know.
It's so weird. I'm a little shaken up by
This
it.
is like one of those fun episodes where you get to learn a lot more about something that you already really liked and enjoyed, and a person that you already liked and enjoyed, and
Or
then-
maybe didn't.
or maybe
And you
did-
learn another side of a person.
Yeah, but then you get to end the episode knowing that we all have psychic powers.
Yeah, it's one of those episodes.
It's one of those episodes.
One of those
you
kind of
know.
episodes.
It's pretty cool. That's a fun thing that just happened.
What do you think that there's psychics everywhere. We run into the line of work that we're in, you can't throw a rock and not hit a psychic.
Mhm.
They're everywhere. What do you think is different about Uri? What made Uri such a unique case? How did he break through when so many people, they get a reality television show and then they're gone 5 years later?
I think that Uri Geller has that amazing thing that you see rarely, and that is that he is a star.
Yeah,
He's a star.
he is.
He's just a star. There's something magical and magnetic about certain kinds of people, and he has that, like, for lack of a better term, like star quality.
Yeah.
There's just something special about him.
I mean, people knew it from the get.
Yeah.
He was modeling.
Mhm.
He was, he's tried it everywhere.
Yeah.
He look at the amount of special people
Yeah.
that were drawn to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple governments were drawn
Yeah.
to this guy. Celebrities were drawn to this guy. They just have a way of picking out their own.
Mm-hmm.
I think that no matter what Uri went into, he was destined to be a celebrity.
Yeah.
This one, for some reason, there's just something that stuck about this. People loved the spoon bending gimmick. They thought it was great. Do you think that Uri has powers?
I do. I really do.
Really?
I really do. Like I am not a skeptic at all, and maybe can find myself often, having to like reel myself back in sometimes when it comes to my ability to believe in things.
Yeah.
But I think that Uri is a person who has maybe outside of what we recognize him for, has proven, I think, enough that there is some kind of ability going on there.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily what we see up front.
Right.
The upfront stuff is its own thing. But I think if you dig a little deeper and you kind of get to know this personality a little bit more, you start to go, yeah, wait, it definitely sort of starts to feel a little bit more authentic.
What do you think, Connor? You think Uri Geller has powers?
I do think that Uri Geller has powers, but he only has the same powers that everybody else has.
Sure.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
So if you look at some of the stuff that he's been tested through, I gotta side with the skeptics and the magicians on most of the tricks.
Yeah.
Even on most of the stuff in that video.
Yeah.
We didn't see much remote viewing from him.
No.
That was mostly just Project Stargate itself. But he is an incredible illusionist,
Yeah.
mentalist, whatever you want to call it, at just totally disarming people. Maybe he's an amazing hypnotist.
Yeah.
Something like that is going on. There's been a misportrayal that happened to him in the 70s, and he's been stuck with it for 60 years. And so we're there. But I think that the big lesson that I learned from Uri and from this entire story is that, as cheesy as this sounds, confidence is key.
Yeah. He
And
believes it.
Mhm.
He believes it.
For sure.
The people around him, when he's being, are believing it.
Yeah.
And when you believe in yourself, you can start to do these things too, and the people around you and all that. It's pretty phenomenal.
We talk about that in general psychic phenomena and paranormal phenomena. You know, what you believe, you create. We talk about it. I feel like it comes up in almost every episode that we do. The more power that you give something, the more it can manifest. And I think that involves the power you give yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
Uri believes that he has these powers. I
Yeah.
truly do think that. I think maybe he might, the spoon thing might be just a magic trick gimmick. But we were kind of talking earlier when we were watching these SRI videos and we were kind of putting the timeline together. I started laughing because I thought, wouldn't it be funny if, because of the psychic soldier race that was happening between the United States and Russia, if the United States found this guy and just gaslit him for 20 years to think he had magic powers?
Uh-huh.
Like
he's so confident. Let's just let him believe it. Yeah.
Nobody's testing the testers.
Mm-hmm.
So what if they're the ones who are like putting stuff in his head to like pick this thing? This is the one. What if they're giving him subtle hints? Because if he believes it and he goes out and he starts telling people this and other people start talking about this, they were letting people write articles for Nature.
Mm-hmm.
CIA was letting this information out. All it means is that our foes are going, holy shit, they've got a Superman now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But what if the unintended consequence of all of that is they actually gave him superpowers?
Yeah, exactly.
Because he believes in himself.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I land on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, much like Connor, I think that because he believes in himself, he's unlocked things that we all have. I think we can all do it. Here's the thing. Psychic as a rock over here.
Mm-hmm.
If I can remote view,
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can do it. You don't have to be Uri Geller.
Mm-hmm.
One of the Stargate trainers made a reference where they were like, anybody can be an athlete. It's just that anybody can make the motion with your arm. It's just that some people are Olympic javelin throwers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
At the end of the day, maybe what we can take away from Uri Geller and his incredible story, which isn't finished yet. He's still around.
Mm-hmm.
He's still, there's a stunt once in a while. Maybe the real message that Uri has for all of us is to believe in ourselves, to believe in the power that we have inside of us, and that sometimes we're capable of doing incredible things if we only believe that we can. That's what makes Uri Geller's Bent Spoon a haunted object.
The Haunted Objects podcast is hosted by Greg and Dana Newkirk, produced by Connor J. Randall, with photography directed by Carl Pfeiffer, and features exclusive artifacts from the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal. To learn more about the artifacts featured in this episode, take part in live interactive experiments, and enjoy exclusive Haunted Objects content, become a museum member at patreon.com/paramuseum. This has been a Planet Weird production.
Dude.
You're psychic.
I think everyone is psychic.
I'm deleting everything from all the bios on my social media, and I'm just writing remote viewer. Accurate.
Master remote viewer.
I'm master accurate remote viewer.
Oh my God.
You read about the spoon trick and the parties and stuff, and you're like, people were amazed that they could do it.
This episode's going to be fucking awesome.
This episode's awesome.